Welcome to Tuesday, May 23rd, meeting of the Palo Alto Parks and Recreation Commission. We'll begin with a roll call.
Vice Chair Freeman,
Here.
Commissioner Cribbs,
Here.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Here.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes.
and Commissioner Oche.
Here, please.
Vice Chair, that's 5 present.
Thank you. Our meeting will commence with the public comment section. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the commission on items not listed on the agenda. If you are present in the meeting room and wish to speak, please complete a speaker card and hand it to Javad over here. For those joining us via Zoom, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom to indicate your desire to speak. If you have comments on agenda items, those items, time will be allocated after that particular session.
Vice Chair, I'm seeing no hands raised online or in person.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, we will go over the agenda changes, additions, and deletions. In order to provide more time for presentation and discussion, I would like to make a motion. I would like to move actually the Ebike access policy discussion, which is item number 4, to occur. Item number 3, I think it is, to occur after the park dedication informational update. And that's to give us a little bit more time with the discussions that might go on. Okay.
Do you need a motion?
I don't think we need a motion for that. No.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, though.
Vice Chair or Chair, can I just add to that? Councilmember Vinker is in the Finance Committee meeting, and so she wants to join the e-bike conversation as well. So I'll be queuing her when that item comes up, and then she'll join the conversation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, are there any proposed changes to the agenda from the commissioners? Okay, moving on. Seeing none, we will move on to the minutes approval. Are there any other changes with those? Are there any changes? Anyone have anything to report on the minutes from last week? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, let's move, motion to approve. Let's move to a vote.
Vice Chair Freeman,
I approve.
Commissioner Cribbs,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes.
and Commissioner Oche.
Approved.
Vice Chair, that's a 5-0 vote.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to department reports.
Good evening, Commissioners. Sarah Robustelli, Division Manager for Open Space Parks and Golf. Javad's pulling up the presentation for today. Let's see, next slide. We can talk about recruitments. Just to reiterate what Director O'Kane mentioned, we are really thrilled to have a new assistant director, Steve, who will be joining us shortly, May 6th. So we're really looking forward to that. We still have summer camp counselors as well as an open space technician, and there will be multiple technician recruitments going on in the near future. So we encourage for people to help us and become a part of our team by applying. Let's see, next slide. So some of the special events that will be taking place, you've heard these before, but we just want to reiterate. Let's see, we have the 3rd annual Palo Alto Puzzle Hunt. This includes basically several weeks of puzzles during the month of May. It's free and it's filled with puzzles for you and your family and friends to solve together. Solve 1 week's worth or do them all. It basically includes people and gets them out into our parks. So happy solving. Also, we have the May Fet Parade and Fair, which is celebrating its 100th year. We invite you to gather and join with family and friends and your neighbors, float making skills, and take home prizes. And then after that, the Kiwanis Club will also be hosting at Heritage Park with music and booths, games, food trucks. So again, same day, it's just a continuation and celebration that we invite you to. Next slide. The teen event, we're continuing the Friday nights at the Drop. So inviting again to come to the Teen Center. It's been a big success, and with new themes and activities each week, it's a great place for teens to hang out, open to Palo Alto teens only from 6 to 8 p.m. at Mitchell Park Community Center. And then we'll go to the next slide here. Something new that we're kind of showcasing again. I know when Darren was here, he provided nature notes, but I also wanted to let you know that for the public as well as the commission, that these open space resources are available on our website. So throughout the years, these nature notes, which I found very interesting. There's over probably 30 of them available on our site. So you can either scan that QR code or visit that kind of shorter link. But again, they're all available on our website. And then Ask a Ranger is another fun project that the Rangers have done in the past, and just wanted to open this up as a open space resource and let the commission and the public know about that. Next slide. So we have some project updates. We're happy to report that we've completed 2 of the scheduled 4 work parties. Mitchell Park is completed. Materials, so staff went out there. Materials were still needed for the Rinconada upgrades, but you can definitely see the before and after. It's amazing what a fresh coat of paint will do, and sanding down of things and freshening up. So they're getting ready for the rentable season at Mitchell Park. So, and there's the team from one of the work days as well. Next slide. So the skate park, one update that we do have, you'll find as we move forward in the slides, the new content is bolded. So we did receive feedback with the parking analysis. Today, I was able to share this parking analysis with the skate park liaison, Commissioner Cribbs. We will be working, offline to work on next steps, but that has been moving forward as well. So we're happy about that. Next slide. Oh, there should be, are you able to advance one more where I'm missing one picture? Okay, maybe back again. I'm sorry, it looks like one picture didn't show up, but that's okay. Resurfacing of the multi-use courts at Terman and Fletcher. That's the photo that's missing there on and that big empty space. But I can attest it looks very nice. So that was completed April 1st and 2nd. And then on the right-hand side, the Baylands entrance gate replacement project, the trenching work was done last weekend, and you can see it on the only photo that's on this slide. And that work will continue in the next several weeks while we the trenching's done, but then we have to bring the utilities to it to make it an automatic gate. So that will be a great advancement. And again, one of our capital improvement projects for the year. If you advance the slide, this will have a few more updates here. So the El Camino turf project, replacement project we've been working on, it's slated to go to council next month, and with an estimated construction window starting in the summer with completion. Mitchell Park Dog Park, the bidding is taking place this month and expected to award in June in just a couple months, as well as the project being started and completed this summer. Ramos Park Improvement Project, the restroom and playground, construction has begun and installation scheduled for June of this year. Rinconada restroom, same thing. Construction has begun, but it's the install date again is scheduled for June of this year. Next slide. Cameron Park Improvement Project. We have a construction start of June and is slated to complete in September. And then the Cubberley Field restrooms, this actually has a change from what we stated at the last meeting, which is an earlier, the Cubberley, building scheduled to be installed and delivered in fall, which I believe last time it was going to be I believe it was winter. So that was an adjustment. And then you should have been notified within your emails of the Robles Park Improvement Project. They will be, we will be hosting a community meeting this Thursday from 7 to 8. It's on Zoom for a community meeting specifically about the playground renovations. So those are the new items for our capital improvement. And I believe the next slide, it has the remainder of our items, but these items do not have updates since our last meeting. And that concludes the departmental report for this month.
Thank you. I will open it up for members of the public that might have excuse me? No public comment. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll open it up to the commission. Any questions on this side?
Yes, Vice Chair. I am delighted to hear the report that the study for parking is done for the skate park. I'm anxious to see what the plans are for the next steps, which I believe have to include getting the stakeholders to come back together and see where they all are, and then get approval from the council to actually raise the money that they intend to raise. And the Palo Alto Friends of the Parks are anxious to create a bucket on their website to put the money in. So this is great news. So thank you very, very much for reporting on that. Appreciate it.
Commissioner O'Shea?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate the updates that you gave. Congratulations to Steve. We can't wait to have him. Quick question. Okay, before my questions, my bag of questions, clarifying questions, I would like to say I'm very glad about the teen programs. I would circle back to find out how the trend for the attendance is, because I believe it's necessary for the entire residents to know we're doing something, and then, make the best use of what we currently have out there for teens. I also love the open space resources you shared. And kudos to our rangers for, giving us the access to be able to ask them any questions. I also like the fresh coat of paint. It's always good to have fresh coat of paint and kind of make things look, newer and finer, more attractive for our residents. Quick question that I have is for the restroom project. During the restroom project, would we have like a mobile replacement? Or during that period, what would happen? What would residents use in the parks in terms of restrooms?
Yeah. Depending on the sites, some of them do not have restrooms. Some of them have porta potties. And some of them are just antiquated or much further away. So there's a variety of some, there's no restroom on site. And then others have portable restrooms.
Let me rephrase the question. So for the ones that will be replaced, what would the intermediate solution be for our residents while we wait for the installation? Would we have like temporary?
There's where new restrooms are being placed, they're not currently disrupting the restrooms that are already on site.
I think if I could add, the new restrooms are adding convenience and facilities, with the exception of the Coverly playing fields where there is porta potty set up right now, and there has been for a while.
So these, like in Coverly, will be an additional restroom. Okay. Okay. Commissioner Kleinhoff?
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for the report. It's nice to see you starting to take more responsibility. Yeah, I have a question, and thank you for the nature notes. It's good to have that information for people to be able to find it, and thank you for looking into that. The lighting at the ballpark, any update on that?
I visited the site, and staff is going to reach out at our next Public Works and CSD meeting to discuss it. There is a capital improvement project that calls out lighting. However, it is not an extensive project that focuses on lighting. So that's something we're going to need to revisit, but it is being looked at. So I believe there's also running concurrently, there is new lighting code that's consistent with dark skies that is in the works too, and going to city council. So I think these two things are running concurrently, so staff is aware of it and looking into it.
If possible, it would be good to turn those lights off at 10 or 11 p.m., the ones that are right on the creek. I don't know if that can be done, but they are kind of seem out of code anyway, but at least they can be turned off at a certain time. That would be great help for the natural environment there. The other thing is just mentioning again that if it's possible to have the final environmental impact report for the golf course project posted on our website, that would be very helpful, because a lot of people have questions that should, if that was available. The draft is there, but the final is not. So if that can be added, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thanks, Sarah, for the report. And as Commissioner Kleinhaus mentioned, great to hear about the nature notes and Ask a Ranger. I'm curious about the history of this. It's been something that's been around for a while, or?
It has. It's a bit of the archives, should I say. So yes, I believe they were done years ago, but all a lot of it still very relevant today.
Thanks.
Maybe we can find a way to start again.
They are also available in both interpretive centers. So that when I went up to Foothills, they had a whole pamphlet section, which they're done very nicely.
So that's available at the Foothills Nature Preserve and the Baylands Interpreters and Arrastadero as well?
Yeah, I'll have to check on that.
Yeah, great.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, probably not. Great. And I just want to mention that the department report is available as a link in the agenda. It's added after the fact. So if anybody wanted to get access to those QR codes, they could go to the Parks and Rec website and look at the agenda for this evening, and the department report link will be there. So that's very helpful. And Javad, thanks for getting those links added. That's very helpful. Other questions? On the El Camino Park turf replacement. So that I wasn't aware that needed to go to City Council for a bid approval. Could you explain? I thought we had a CIP for that for this year. Is it because the work is extending into next year and it'll be part of next year's budget?
The dollar amount, it's due to the dollar amount, it needs to go to City Council. So they approved the CIP plan, but then it needs to come back for City Council for approval.
It's the contract that comes forward.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just standard practice. Thank you. Ramos Park construction has started. Is the playground still open, or is it closed now until construction is completed? I'm just curious.
Oh,
Well, it will be closed when construction commences through project construction.
And is there signage up at the park that's mentioning this is coming?
I'm not sure. I will have to check with Peter on that, unless you know,
No.
Sarah.
I'm not sure.
Is that something that could be added just with a QR code or something that people could see?
What's that?
Maybe some signage with a link to the QR code if there's a web page that's talking about what the changes are happening, and that seems like a good best practice for a lot of the park improvements coming up, like Cameron, et cetera. Thank you. I noticed what it seemed like at Foothills Nature Preserve is, I don't know if anyone knows, but it looked like there's a new trail that goes from the interpretive center to the across the field / meadow
To the bridge.
to the beginning of the Los Trancos Trail. I wasn't aware of that in any plans, but it seemed like a dirt trail was being put in there. Do we have any information on that?
I do. That is similar to Sunfish Island Bridge, how that was pulled out of the larger capital improvement. This is being done immediate due to, I think, to streamline some of the process of, I believe Mike, and he may be on today.
He was on earlier, actually.
Yeah. And he might, is he still on? Maybe it, yeah, let me, Mike, are you able to speak to that?
Yeah. So the trail was signed into the general maintenance for the general services contract we have for trail maintenance and open space. The request to prioritize it came up because of trip hazards between all the gopher holes and the hidden utility lines that go across the lawn there. So that's why it was taken care of, because it came up in the contractor's agenda list.
Okay, thanks. I just had not heard anything about it, and it hadn't been shared with the Foothills Partners meetings as well. I was just interested to see it happening. Thank you. And so that'll just be is it a dirt trail or a decomposed granite trail across the meadow there?
Yeah, it's going to be similar to the trail going across the lower portion of the dam and also kind of just in front of the interpretive center where we have the decomposed granite material.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. On another subject, I'm interested still in hearing the status of the Pearson Arastadero maintenance, quote, maintenance yard. What's stuff doing there? When's it going away?
Was that for me or for?
No, I think
I think I can answer that. I just had to pull up an email. And I'll start, Mike, and then if you have additional information, you can share. So there's still quite a bit of work that needs to happen in the preserve. They're pulling in a new fiber cable and removing overhead cable and poles in the park up to the Baranda booster station. And then there's also some underground work that's happening from the booster station up the hill to the park reservoir. It's a significant effort, and they anticipate being able to have a better schedule coming up soon. So that equipment's going to be there for a while, but it's still because there's work that's being done within the park. They're expecting completion of the project in fiscal year 25, which I know is a 12-month window, but that's what we have right now. Mike, do you have anything else to share?
No, that sums it up pretty much. They're just completing some of the fiber work. The cables that are stored there are the shells for the wires that are going in the ground.
And how long has this work been going on? It just seems it seems like when the park improvement ordinance came through to have this work done, that this is way beyond the expectation of the original plan and what was asked for. And it also seems
going on.
it also seems kind of indefinite at this point.
Well, there was 2 construction activities going on at Gate B within Arastadero. So there was the Corte Madera water tank replacement project, and then now the undergrounding utilities is kind of dovetailed that project to use the same space. I believe the undergrounding's been going on for at least 3 years. I'd have to double check. They haven't posted on the City of Palo Alto's website.
Okay, I look forward to hearing a more detailed report of or summary of project plan. Thank you. Thanks.
Commissioner Kleinhouse.
So I have been focusing on other parks, and so I haven't been to Foothills in a little while. And so I didn't see a new trail there. And I'm wondering what sort of process leads to establishing a trail in a place that was never a trail before, just because people walk there. I understand that, people might walk and it's uneven because there's gopher trails, but that's something that if somebody wants to walk there, takes that risk. If not, they can walk around. I just find it a little upsetting to think about the visual impacts of a straight line through that meadow from the visitor center and the decomposed granite, which has impacts. Why can't we use local materials if we were going to use something like a little bit of mulch or something? So I'm just wondering how this trail even comes to be without any discussion here, or just, oh yeah, people walk there, so let's pave it kind of thing. And that decomposed granite along Baranda Lake was actually very, very impactful visually when it was first put there. Please explain why this is even happening.
Maybe that's something you guys can come back with that on your, at a later report.
Can
And
we not build it until it come back? Can we have a discussion about that before it get built?
Yeah, I would,
Yeah.
don't think it's something we can address now, but let staff go back and kind of
Yeah, so-
research the question and then come back maybe in the next staff report.
I think it's already done, based on when I saw it.
Well, maybe it needs to be removed. We should have a discussion of that.
Good, sir.
Yes, I just heard from Mike, that trail has already been completed.
Can it be removed?
So I prefer, like Vice Chair Freeman said, that we bring this next month because it's not an agendized item. And I don't know if Sarah's prepared to answer the questions.
Right.
If we can agendize it, because it's not the first time these kind of things happen, without CEQA and without bringing it to the public, it just happens. And the last time it happened, it was Castanon. There was work done without CEQA and it was a trail maintenance work, which is okay in that case, but I think this needs to come back here for discussion.
Okay, so it's something that staff can look into that and maybe agendize it for your next staff report.
Yeah, we'll discuss it with Mike and then with Chair Brown when we do the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Or
Thank
maybe, perhaps you can work with the liaisons to the open space, which used to be the Foothills liaison.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. Thanks for very in-depth report, Sarah. And I really, the Ask the Ranger program, I'm hoping you get a lot of, be interesting to see how well the public takes into that and how many, if you can track that and let us know if that's something that's really found to be very useful. I mean, I think people are asking for it, so it's hopefully it's something that'll take off and be something the Rangers and the public will be happy with. Another question on the Mitchell Park, the cleanup and so forth. I was curious as to how we were able to, I guess, find volunteers for that, and sounds like it went well.
Yeah, it was a work party for CSD staff, so community services staff, kind of a team building, right? We're all in different locations. So Mitchell Park, Cubberly, MSC, as well as Lucy Stern. So it's nice to kind of get us all together every now and again, especially since there's new faces. And so we performed the work during work hours, sanded things down, pressure washed. It was it was just 2 hours for 2 days, so it was very efficient.
Okay, okay. I have no other questions. Let's go ahead and move on to the next item.
Okay, the next item is an informational presentation from the Palo Alto Pickleball Club. And we have member Ron Gentile, who's going to be giving a presentation. So Ron, if you wanted to come up to the podium. Yep, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioners, if you can, please speak into your microphone. The audience members are having a little bit of a hard time hearing.
Members of the commission, thank you. Very grateful for the opportunity to come here and talk about pickleball. The motto of the Pickleball Club is arrive as a stranger, leave as a friend. And I think it's actually very apt because what's happening at Mitchell Park and with pickleball is something that I believe is creating some magic there that really intersects well with issues in the community. And so I wanted to talk about that. Next, please. So quick background, starting point. For me, I moved to California, worked at Adobe, got involved in the startup world, et cetera. And I'm currently CEO of a mental health company called MoodFit. And a long sports background. I played sports my whole life, recently gotten into doing all this crazy Ironman things and stuff like that. And my view on pickleball was always, why would I do that? That sounds like something that people do when they're retired and maybe their mobility is not as good or whatever it is. And I just had this perception that this was something that was just this sort of niche thing off here that was happening. And finally, somebody I used to work with kept badgering me and said, hey, come out and try this thing. And so I said, sure. And I met him at Mitchell Park and I remember walking up there and opening the gates, and there were these 13 courts of people laughing and playing and running around and all this stuff happening. And the first thing I said was, how long has this been here? I live in Palo Alto. I drive by there on Middlefield all the time. I had no idea this was going on. I've been to Mitchell Park Library 30 times. I had no idea this was going on. A few days later, I went back with a friend of mine in the neighborhood who had wanted to play. And I was like, I know nothing, but come on, we'll go take these rickety pieces of plywood and go down there and do something. And we went, I think, early on a Sunday morning, found a court, jumped on there, started knocking the ball back and forth, no clue what we're doing. And two guys come up and said, hey, do you guys want to play a game? And I said, sure, but I just wanted to let you know we have no idea what we're doing. And they were like, no problem, we'll actually show you. And for the next hour, they took us under their wing and they showed us the scoring, the shots, the everything. And the guy said, by the way, the ball you brought here is an indoor ball. Went over to his bag, opened this thing of balls and gave me a couple of these outdoor balls and said, here you go, keep those. And they showed us everything. And on the drive home with my friend, I was like, was that weird to you? And he's like, yes, I have never seen that my whole life. And I was like, I never have either. Is this a cult or what is going on here? So, it was so incredibly welcoming, so incredibly friendly. And when I looked around, I was like, my gosh, there's people down here and they're really athletic and competing and doing amazing things. And there's people down here who are laughing and socializing, having all this fun. I was like, there is something odd happening here. So I started going out more regularly. And being a startup person and coming from a product background, we are always looking for pain points or glimmers of happiness and joy, because that's what we pursue. And as I was out there and I was starting to play and people are just talking to you and you're observing all this and the people are laughing and all this stuff is happening. And you realize that you can walk out there by yourself. You don't have to make an appointment with somebody you know. You just walk out there with this $10 piece of plywood. In fact, frankly, you could walk out there in your street clothes, stand in the middle of it and say, I've got no idea what's going on here, but I would like to do something. And in 2 minutes, someone will have taken you, gotten you on a court, given you a paddle, given you the balls, and start showing you all the things. And that's weird that happens. That doesn't happen many times in life where people are so incredibly enthusiastic about something that it's not just the main people in the pickleball club, it's people broadly who are out there involved in this. And so I started bringing other people, and these are people who don't play sports. I frankly have known them from book clubs and other things, and they've really never been that enthusiastic about anything. And all of a sudden, I'm like, why are you sending me text messages at midnight with, I saw this pickleball video, and what does this mean? So all of a sudden, they're into this, and they're badgering me to go out and to play more. And at a certain point, our company is in mental health, and so I started to really drill down and say, what is going on out here that's pulling people back more and more and giving them this happiness and joy? And you start piecing it together, and you start to realize, okay, they're outside, they're moving, they're socializing, they're connecting with people. The barrier to socialize with someone is zero. You can walk out there and immediately you are part of that community and people will pull you right into it. So if you fast forward to today and my little pickleball journey, and I'm sharing it mostly because it seems that everybody I talk to has a very similar experience of people just being so enthusiastic, they pull them into this thing. So it's become very, very clear to me that the reason that pickleball is so popular and that there is so much magic happening at Mitchell Park is because of the fundamental happiness and joy people get, including the social connections and other things. And we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. And a byproduct of that happiness, my premise is actually helping to address a lot of key social infrastructure issues. And we could utilize this more broadly. Next slide, please. So about pickleball, racket sport that brings together tennis, badminton, ping pong, created in the 60s in Seattle, which probably is also when Starbucks was created or something. Third most popular participation sport in the US today, which is pretty amazing for a sport that I thought was just some random corner case thing, to find out it's third behind just jogging and biking. That this sport came out of nowhere, boom, past golf, past tennis, past all these things. There's 10,000 places to play in the US. There's more than 44,000 courts, which exploded my mind, given I didn't even know we had courts here in Palo Alto. It was designed to be played by people of all ages. The average age has come down, come down, come down. It's at 38. It's continuing to drop. 29% of the players are 18 to 34. It's fastest growing among people 24 and under, including kids. Women now are growing faster than men in pickleball. There are pro leagues. There are tournaments nationwide. It's broadcast by ESPN. It's broadcast on Amazon Prime. It is a thing and a big thing. Next slide, please. And it's innovating. You know, we all know people, the objections have been about noise and things like that. And the USA Pickleball Club, which is the governing body for pickleball nationwide, they have now a special category for quiet products. There are new paddles that have come out. One is called the Owl, and John McEnroe is part of this, and he's got some little quote here about he likes to be noisy, but this paddle is not noisy. This stuff is all happening. They're figuring it out. There's new balls that are quieter. All these things that historically were objections are being ironed out. When you get ESPN, you get Amazon, you get LeBron James, Tom Brady, you get all these parties involved in this, they're going to figure out the details. This thing is a real thing. Next slide, please. So cycling back, why is it so incredibly popular? Low barrier entry. Skills. By design, it was designed so multi-generations could play together. Little kids, grandparents, and everybody in between. So it has all these different shots in it, some of which take hardly any mobility, but you practice and you get really crafty at it. I'll be honest, the first time I went out there, I was schooled by someone twice my age, just ran me ragged all over the court. So everybody can play. Skills, ability, and equipment. Like I said, it's like a $10 piece of plywood from Amazon to get started. And in fact, they give these out I randomly, like 9 months ago, some place just sent me out of the blue pickleball paddle because they were just sending things out to people. And I believe you fast forward a couple of years, insurance companies are going to be sending out pickleball paddles because of all the physical and mental health benefits. It's inherently super social. Mostly it's always played as doubles. Games are short. So it's not, I'm going to go out and I'm going to sit here for 90 minutes while somebody else does their thing, and then I'm going to get my turn. Games are like 15 minutes. And it's super easy, as I mentioned, to show up as an individual. And there's just a little protocol. You set your paddle down, and then you're in the next game, and off you go. Numerous physical and mental health benefits. Next slide, please. So the Palo Alto Pickleball Club, rapidly growing local club, more than 1,100 members. It grows 25% year over year, and they don't market anything. They do no marketing. So it's all word of mouth. They are the caretakers and ambassadors of Mitchell Ball pickleball courts. They even fund facility improvements there. And Mitchell Park, it turns out, is considered the epicenter of Bay Area pickleball. And it's not a surprise because you've got these great ambassador organization there who are running clinics and helping people get started and being welcoming and all this kinds of stuff. They have 15 courts, it's open 6 to 10, blah, blah, blah. There's players of all levels of background. When you go out there, you see everybody playing. You see kids, you see grandparents, you see there are pros that sometimes are there. There's some of everything there. One thing that is certainly true is a lot of times it is more than 2x at capacity. The demand is so high that there are queues of people waiting and waiting and waiting to get on. And my contention would be the pickleball club, what they have done is taken something that is good and actually make it great and make it magical. And it's today doing things for the community in a really integral, fundamental way. Next slide, please. So ways to give back. Numerous events. In the last 12 months, they had more than 400 events, more than 3,000 participants. They run these getting started sessions. I was telling somebody about this yesterday. You just show up to this thing and they have the paddles, the balls, the coaches, they get you on the court, they show you every little shot and they get you started. They show you, here's where the restrooms are, here's where this happens, etc. And they go from getting started through, they have a whole set of clinics to help people get acclimated and get going with pickleball and to meet new people and make these social connections as part of it. They run a lot of programs for youths. They have social activities out there. There's a big picnic area, and there are always different kinds of activities, and they have an online community. So there are lots of opportunities they facilitate for people to connect, and they have tournaments and participate and get involved in all kinds of tournaments, including the Bay Area Senior Games. They host events for community organizations. We actually did one for Rotary a week or two ago. They'll actually say, hey, bring out the members of your organization. We'll bring the ambassadors, the coaches, the equipment, the courts, and we will do everything to get you acclimated, get you going, and basically have an amazing time here. They show them the basics, and they genuinely just make them feel welcome in that community. Also, what the club does is they work with surrounding communities to share the recipe, to share what they have created, and over time, what they have learned what works. East Palo Alto, Mountain View, Milpitas, Los Altos, Portola Valley, et cetera, et cetera. And people from the pickleball club here who have learned the recipe have taken it to Vietnam, to Tonga, to Japan, and other places. Ultimately, what it does is facilitates this incredibly welcoming community for literally everyone. There are not a lot of places in Palo Alto where you could just go out and say, hey, I know nothing about what's going on here. Would someone just get me going without probably getting harassed or arrested or who knows what? This is a place where they're like, oh my gosh, come right over here. We'll get you going. Next slide, please. So on the surface, it looks like people hitting a ball and people laughing and people competing, right? Makes sense. But my contention is if we actually look under the covers a little bit, next slide, please, we see something more. What we see is that there really, this happiness, this joy, this connection is helping to address key community issues, and they're doing it in a really magical way. Next slide, please. So one thing they do is they serve and connect people of all ages and abilities. This is Ron Albrecht, who's 88 years old, who I saw this morning out there, and you see all the time. On the other end, you have pros, and then you have people with different kinds of physical challenges and limitations, and then you have everybody in between. Everybody is out there playing and playing together. Next slide, please. They serve local youth. Wide range of programs, 6 to 18. They do free clinics, meetup days when kids are out of school, don't have a place to go. They have competitions. They have volunteer opportunities for them. They work with Palo Alto middle and high schools. And they even provide volunteer coaches to help city programs. They actually give them the coaches for free to the city to say, here, help the youth with these programs. And this matters because, let's be honest, we know the kids are not okay. There's a lot of stress that they've endured. And we all know the statistics, anxiety rates, depression rates. This is a tremendous outlet for kids. It's a way for them to go interact with each other safely. It's a way for them to build up these skills. It's a way for them to be mentored. It has a lot of good properties. Next slide, please. It also brings together different cultures and languages. The woman here on the left and the right is Lonnie. Lonnie's part of the Tongan community. And if you've ever heard the combination of laughter from the Tongan community and the joy of pickleball melded together, it is an amazing force that happens out there. They'll hit you with the ball and then laugh, and then you'll laugh, and vice versa. It is just an amazing experience watching them. One day, she showed up with all this food and brought it out, and somebody asked her, oh, are you guys having a party, whatever? She's like, no. She's like, this community has made us feel so welcome here. We wanted to bring all this food out for everybody as a show of thanks. Next slide. It also increases socioeconomic interactions. Again, it's a super low barrier to entry. On the same people, you can have people, same court, people in low-income houses, the very wealthy, and everybody in between. And nobody asks, what do you do? Nobody asks that. They're like, hey, do you want to play on this court? And that's what all the discussion is about. The games are fast, that people are just playing and having fun and laughing. There's not all this typical, what do you do, blah, blah, blah. And this matters because when we spend time with different people, when we spend time with different communities, it increases our empathy. This is a known scientific fact, and that helps to unite the community. Next slide, please. And it builds social connections. Why this matters, US Surgeon General has come out and said, hey, we have a legitimate epidemic of loneliness. His quote, given the significant health consequences of loneliness and isolation, we must prioritize building social connection the same way we have prioritized other critical public health issues such as tobacco, obesity, and substance use disorder. To me, that's incredibly powerful. We need to tackle loneliness like tobacco, obesity, and substance abuse disorders. San Mateo County, some number of months ago, became the first county in the United States to formally declare loneliness a public health emergency. This group on the right is a subset of the Pickleball Club. They call themselves the Early Worms. They meet at 6 a.m. every day. This photo was taken 3 days ago. 6 a.m., a birthday party for somebody. 6 a.m., even when it's 36 degrees, They are out there playing every day. They didn't know one another at all a year ago. It's a great example of how it's brought these people together. Next slide, please. It infuses happiness. This matters because we all know there's a mental health epidemic. 1 in 5 US adults live with a mental illness. Many more are subclinical and yet suffering. And there's a treatment gap. We do not have enough providers, even in a place like Palo Alto, let alone other places. There is a fundamental problem here. The happiness one derives from pickleball is a great way to help with this issue. When I wrote this blog article, August of last year, I said something at the end about, at a point, we're going to have healthcare companies, we're going to have treatment providers writing prescriptions for pickleball, because just by chance, it pulls together all these attributes that are like a therapist's dream. If a therapist said, let's take everything I would love you to do, here, it's rolled into this pickleball. Next slide, please. It provides engaging exercise. Of course, we know there's a high adult obesity rate. We know we have a problem with kid obesity as well. Less than 25% of US adults get enough physical activity, and that unfortunately goes down with age. 50% of people quit exercise within 6 months. Research studies have shown people stay with pickleball longer because of the social connections they form. Next slide, please. So my contention is, yes, what you see out there is people running around and hitting this ball and laughing and playing and all this stuff. But what's really happening is they're reducing loneliness. They're improving mental health, including youth mental health. They're uniting the community. They're getting seniors more active, and they're increasing overall physical activity. Next slide, please. So in summary, I think this is an amazing opportunity for a city club partnership, because they have a magical recipe that's happening out there that I genuinely could believe could be applied in other programs, in other ways to help the community. And what I would say is, when you think of pickleball, think beyond the sport. Think of it as a carrier of happiness to the community and the resulting effects that happen in the community when we boost happiness and joy. And when you think of that club, think of it as a tool that you can use to help different groups in the community. You have the ability to be able to partner with them, to be able to say, hey, we want to help this group. Could you design programs to help this group? They're already starting to bring in all these organizations. They bring the paddles, the balls, the coaches, the blah, blah, blah. Everything comes in. It's a great tool to be able to utilize to help other groups in the community. And honestly, I think per dollar, per square foot, it's hard for me to imagine there is another mechanism you have at your disposal that can bring as much happiness, can be as helpful to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to, before asking clarifying questions from the commission, let's see if there's any public comments.
Vice Chair, I'm seeing no hands raised, and we do have some in-person comments. Please fill out a speaker card. And if there's any attendees online wishing to speak, please raise your hand. Vice Chair, if you want to go to any clarifying questions before we get to discussion, we can come back to public
Okay,
comment.
let's do that. Thank you. Any commissioners have any clarifying questions? Comments?
Comments not clarified.
Well, comments. Okay. How about any comments?
Comments, yes.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Oche? No.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thanks, Vice Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation. I appreciate your.
Sorry, Commissioner, when we go into the
Okay.
public comments,
Okay.
come back to
Awesome.
comments. Thank you.
Okay. One second, please. Eileen, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Won't take that long. My name is Eileen Brooks, and I also play pickleball at Mitchell Park. And in bringing the community together, I wanted to say that Achieve Kids, which butts up against Mitchell Park courts, allows us to park on one side of their parking lot. And at the end of the year, our club president sends out a notice to all the members and asking us to thank them, perhaps monetarily. So that is another way that the club gives back. We give donations to CAR. And when we had our last event, we used Ada's Cafe as our caterer. And so I just, again, I'm just reiterating what you're saying is bringing everyone together in the community. So that's it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Monica. Monica, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. So the first thing I want to do is thank Ron for that incredible presentation. I can't believe after all these years of standing here that we could come here instead of begging for something, instead of asking for something, to actually have this celebration of what you've done, what the staff has done, what you, the commissioners and the commissioners before you have done. I mean, you have built this community of pickleball, and I'm just so grateful. And I want those who are pickleball players to acknowledge that, that you're here. Thanks. So thank you very much. Thank you, Ron.
Vice Chair, I'm seeing no more hands raised in person or online.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and open it up for any commissioners have any, Commissioner Oche?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you for showing up. I really learn a lot from your group. You're very cooperative. You come together when you have a presentation, which is very inspiring. I wanted to double check on the ask in the last page. I wasn't too clear about that. So if you could speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that this is remember, I'm a 16-month pickleball player, not a 10-year pickleball player. So, but I'll give you my perspective on this, which is, this is a multi-step process. This is a process where the club really wants to work together to be able to take these programs out into the community and to be able to, frankly, get the facilities so they can do this at bigger scale over time, because the demand is exceeding so far the capacity that they have. But I think there are many things they can do to work together, including being able to have this city club kind of partnership and help with programs for different parts of the community.
Thank you. I would defer to our experts in the city. I don't know what the process is for partnership. I don't know what that looks like, but I'll defer to our experienced city staff if they want to add 1 or 2 recommendations on what the expected or planned outcome would look like. I don't know. Thank you.
Commissioner Brooks?
Oh, thank you very much. So thanks for being here. Thanks for all the data and for your vision really for the future. I think both Commissioner Greenfield and I were on the master plan when pickleball really appeared in Palo Alto and got included in the master plan. And I think it's really fun to sit up here and see what you all have accomplished with the help of the city staff. Certainly, Adam Howard deserves a lot of credit for the work that he's done working with pickleball, and your members deserve a ton of credit for coming to us and keeping us informed and communicating with us and just showing and telling your stories. So just in closing, I would like to say, I love to go over and see the courts, hear the people, see the energy, see the all ages, not just seniors, which is what people thought pickleball was all about. See what you're doing with the kids, see it's in the junior high schools and everything. So as you can all tell that I'm a pretty enthusiastic supporter about what you're doing. I think you're a great model for all of us to see what can happen really when the city and citizens and people who love sport can work together to really accomplish great stuff. So I'll stop there, but thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Greenfield.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. It truly is a celebration, as Monica mentioned. I think pickleball is a model success story in our community, and it's great to have an opportunity to celebrate it like this. And in your presentation was really highlighted a lot of the benefits that are less obvious and very a lot of insights, and it's a great sharing. I appreciated Eileen's comments as well about the parking at Achieve. I've watched the pickleball. I've noticed people parking there. I was wondering, is everybody okay with that? And it sounds like it is, and that's great. It's great that the community's figured that out, how to work together to everyone's benefit. Regarding the offer to help for the Palo Alto Pickleball Club to help develop and deliver community programs, I'm wondering, I'm very interested in staff's thoughts on that in terms of ideas on how to potentially leverage the pickleball club's resources further within the community.
I know that we're already collaborating together in the sense of a good partnership. That's something I believe Adam Howard's team has been starting classes too, but that's something we can look into.
And is, as far as the thoughts of collaboration, obviously direct pickleball related activities apply, but are there thoughts on how to take this model and extend it to other types of activities? That's an interesting thought line.
Yeah, we could talk to the Pickleball Club a little bit more about that. We do have a lot of private partnerships within the city. All have slightly different models. So definitely worth exploring how we might be able to do more for sports and recreation.
Great, thanks. And I'm sure that the Pickleball Club may have some ideas on how to further benefit as well. Overall, it's incredible walking by the pickleball courts and seeing and hearing the amazing cacophony of contagious enthusiasm, and it is a success story, and it's wonderful to see the community here tonight supporting it as well. So thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Mr. Kleinfeld.
Thank you for the presentation. The priority that City Council, the priorities for 2024 includes community health, safety, wellness, and belongings. That's one of the priorities from the city. And highlighting how this community helps deal with loneliness and welcomes everybody is very gratifying. Thank you for that. I have one suggestion, since you said that the community is able to help the community in many ways. Adobe Creek goes right by the pickleball courts, and occasionally it gets really dirty with all kinds of bottles and tennis balls and all sorts of other things like that. I think that the Water District has an Adopt a Creek section program, and perhaps the Pickleball Club would adopt the creek right next to it and make sure that it doesn't have spray cans and bottles and balls and whatever else falls in there. And so that's just something, a little community service that you can do for the environment if you like to. That's just a suggestion. Somebody wants to speak, and I don't know if I can invite them to speak or not. Vice Chair, it's up to you if you want to let this lady.
Sure, please.
I have an answer for that. So the pickleball club does maintain the courts, but we have found that the city is not emptying the large bins that are outside of the pickleball courts. So in other words, we have our garbage and recycle bins inside the courts that we empty into the bigger bins outside, which are generally full. So that, and that, I thought they were supposed to be emptied maybe every day, but they're not. So that's just one of the reasons why there might be
Thank you.
trash.
So maybe
other
that's
places.
something staff can look into, but that's not what's happening in the creek. The creek gets stuff not only from the trash that it generated potentially in the immediate, the creek, inside the creek that's right next to the pickleball courts. And I've seen, occasionally it gets really messy. And so all it needs is, it's not a city responsibility, it's the water district. If somebody wants to get in touch with me, I can help you find out how to do it, but their will from the community needs to be there first. So thank you.
I think that's a great suggestion. In fact, that if that area, there's the creek, and then there's sort of semi-abandoned cement structures that were once, I think, handball or racquetball or something that are over there, where a lot of trash and things piles up collectively in that area. I think that also is a great candidate for them to be able to help you with.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Grenfell.
Just following up on the trash overflow subject, this is a subject that we've actually had discussions within the field users ad hoc with respect to how to deal with trash overflow at soccer tournaments at Mitchell Park or things like that. And what became clear is there are large trash receptacles that can be used, that the bags can be thrown in, but nobody really knows where these are. And so I think the will of the community is very strong to put trash and recycling and compost in the bin when it's there. The problem happens when there's an overflow issue, and how do you deal with that? But so I think we can probably follow up with some information on where the trash bags could go so they're not overflowing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation and having you all come here to represent the sport that I'm excited about. And I think you all know that you have my support, and I'm sure you have the rest of the commission's support. This is a program, a very valuable program for the city. I know that some of the things that are happening in the sport. I think you mentioned in one of your presentation about noise abatement, which seems to be one of the things why pickleball can't be extended out into some of the other neighboring park is because of the amount of noise that's made from the ball hitting the racket and so forth. So I do know that is a technology that's hopefully comes soon, and if so, that is something that will expand. I know there's a lot of inside pickleball courts that are popping up, and that might be something that the city might look at as far as abandoned buildings and so forth to be able to help the program grow. And just kind of tagging in what Commissioner Greenfield talked about as far as the cities working with maybe with some of the summer, incorporating pickleball into some of the summer programs and really working with the city to probably have, maybe I didn't see it, but just throw that out to see if that is something that, if it's not in this year's summer program, if it's something that maybe you can partner with the pickleball community to make that part of it. Because I think, one of the things that you've pointed out here is the fact that it's been mental health and a lot of, getting people out who would never have thought about going out, and the fact that you can play a sport in 10 or 15 minutes and get exercise. It's a community where you're getting out there, you're meeting other people, and you're in, the thing about pickleball, it's great that you were able to kind of lay out some of the stats as far as this being one of the fastest growing sports. I think, you talk to people and they say, well, is it going to go away? I don't know. Did golf go away? Did tennis go away? It's just that the fact that it reaches so many spectrums of the age group. So I think it's something, and the fact that Palo Alto is on top of that, I think we need to really look at this as being a jewel, and how can we kind of become the model city for the program. And I mean, we probably have a lot of other people coming in from some of the neighboring communities playing as well. So if that could be extended out, where there's a lot more happening in some of our neighboring communities who have the same, their parks and rec have the same vision that we have here in the city, then it would take off some of that load. So I don't know if the community service, if you have anything to add to that on the summer program.
So I'm actually looking at the catalog right now. We do year-round pickleball for youth through adults. And I believe we have some summer camps, although our summer camps really filled up quickly this year. I'm taking a look, maybe we don't, but I think that would be a great addition to do the camps, similar to how we might do a tennis camp, or even a day where you're doing pickleball and something else and something else. So I think that would be a great addition.
Yeah, I think the one thing you coming to the commission that's done is sort of open up the eyes. There's a lot of opportunities here for the city to kind of use you as a model, work together as a team to really help promote this as something that's going to help some of the mental health issues, and getting people out who might not know that there's a forum out there, who might think that there's, when they pass the pickleball courts and everyone's having so much fun, thinking, well, how do I participate? So maybe there has to be some way of just having an open day for just anyone to kind of, I mean, it's open anyway, but trying to advertise it in such a way that people will know that anyone can drop in and actually, take advantage of the opportunity. So thank you again for the presentation.
Great, thank you. Great ideas, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And can I share one personal tidbit about
Sure.
pickleball? Is my daughter is in a sorority in college, and they chose for their fundraiser Pickleball Palooza. So that's happening this weekend.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and move to the next item.
Okay, so I think we agreed to switch the item. So the next would be the park dedication informational update from the park dedication ad hoc.
Thank you for the past cycle. The park dedication ad hoc has been myself and Chair Brown. I'll be handling the bulk of the presentation tonight in Chair Brown's absence, and we'll be looking for support from staff as well for some updates. So this is just a general update on park dedication. We have had the ad hoc has presented to the commission a few times in the past year, and we have had the success story with the Waterwell Park, but we thought it would be useful to present a broader spectrum of information, give you a few more details on things that the ad hoc is working on. Also, I would just observe that Park dedication does have more attention, I think, of city council than it has in many other years. At the city council meeting last night, and even where the Quarry Road project was discussed, some council members were talking about the need to prioritize park dedication efforts in part to potentially offset the 0.3 acres roughly that would be lost, would be undedicated as parkland as part of that project. But it is good to see that there is a lot of support behind the effort to increase the park acreage within our community. It's a highly valued resource. And as our community population continues to grow, that becomes even more important. Next slide, please. So we're going to touch on 4 items this evening. The first one is Waterwell Park. Then we'll also talk about efforts regarding Rinconada Gardens, potentially related to park dedication. We'll talk about a new site that's been identified and is under consideration, which is San Antonio. There's a small mini park opportunity at San Antonio Avenue and Ponce Drive. And then also just talk about the potential for a name change for Herman Park. Next slide, please. So Waterwell Park has been dedicated as parkland. City Council has approved this, and following the recommendation from this body. And there's some other things going on. Maybe I'll hand off to Kristen to clarify the details of where we are on this, because there has been some confusion about it.
Sure, thank you. So the park, or the Towerwell site, was approved to be dedicated parkland. We are going to the HRB, which is the Historic Resources Board, to discuss the naming the park after Fred Eyerly, who there is actually a plaque or a sign at the location that talks about his contributions to the city. And then the second referral from council was to place the site on the National Historic Registry, and we would use a consultant to do that process for us. It's a consultant that the planning department has already on board. And so we would have to go through that process. What we're thinking is, after we have a decision on the renaming, regardless what the decision is, we would then do a ribbon cutting, but probably not wait till the National Registry, because I don't know how long that takes. So would prefer not to wait for that part, but definitely would want to wait until we have the name finalized. And when I have I'm looking for the date for the HRB meeting. When I have that, I'll make sure that the commission knows when that's coming forward to the HRB.
Thank you. And I would just note that the City Council 20 years ago or so had considered the potential for adding the site to National Historic Registry and for park dedication, and had not moved forward with that. So this is a change, and it seems like an appropriate change for where we're at now. Next slide. And Kristen, thank you for correcting me. Towerwell, not Waterwell Park. Yeah. So Rinconada Gardens is a Palo Alto community garden. It's located adjacent to the Palo Alto Art Center. Maybe you can go to the next slide, Javad. That shows more of an overhead where Rinconada Community Gardens is located by the library, and the Art Center is, I guess, just cut off down below. So at roughly at Newell Road and Embarcadero Avenue. And you can see it's quite a large garden. This is our largest community garden. You can see the number of plots there. It's a nice patchwork view of that Previous slide, please. So last year, when the ad hoc was working through the list of potential sites to consider for park dedication, the top two priority sites identified were the Tower Well Park and Recanata Gardens. A potential conflict was identified regarding the Rinconada Gardens site based on a potential future utilities project using an underground wells in the vicinity, not exactly clear where it would be adjacent and overlapping. And so that's a complication at this point that requires some staff review with the utilities department, with the city attorney's office. And so we're waiting for staff feedback to figure out how we can proceed with this. Can we dedicate most of the area? Would we need to leave a carve out of some area being not dedicated, et cetera? Kristen, is there anything you'd like to add regarding that?
No, I don't think so. And just to add a little bit, the utilities department isn't opposed to the park dedicating parkland here. Like Commissioner Greenfield said, they just want to be sure that if there is a project in the future, that they would have the ability to do that project. So nothing is currently planned for this site, but as they kind of try to be resilient to droughts, to climate change, to things like that, if they if there was a need to add some sort of additional water, I don't even know what the right term is because I'm not in utilities, but a water facility there, that they would want the ability to do that. So,
and I don't think it's well understood if dedicating this as parkland would preclude this. Would just require a park improvement ordinance to make changes like that, because I think we have done things like that at other parks, and so hopefully that's the easiest way to move. That is the case, which would make it the easiest to move forward. Next slide, please. Next, two more slides. So I'm referring to this area as San Antonio Circles. That may not be appropriate, and there may be a better word, but there's an opportunity for a mini park in the area highlighted by the oval near the intersection of San Antonio Avenue, which is a side offshoot from San Antonio Road, which is the primary arterial route, and it's Ponce Drive is the last street before San Antonio hits Alma Street, as you can see. So it's a residential area. This is near Green Meadow, in this corner of the community. Next slide, please. Here's a street view of the site. So this is actually there's a series of three circles of landscaped area interwoven between the roadways for circulating, for connecting to San Antonio Road, for going underneath San Antonio Road to the business park on the other side of San Antonio, et cetera. And this one particular circle does seem amenable to a potential park, a mini park. There's a potential room for a seating area, a potential room for a small dog park. This is used by the community that lives nearby there already. We would need to add a crosswalk across San Antonio Avenue there, connecting it at Ponce. This is the only one of the three circles that would be that is viewed to be appropriate for consideration of a park. But this idea was brought forward to staff and then to the ad hoc by a community member who lives in the vicinity, which is very much appreciated, and it seems worth pursuing. And a previous slide, please. So if you if you look, you can see there's a number of little loops there of landscaped area that the roads are circling between. And this is the one that we're talking about. And you can see the potential place for a crosswalk and best access would be Ponce Drive, basically roughly a continuation of Ponce Drive across San Antonio Avenue. So this is a new opportunity. This is a new item on the list. Wanted to share this. Next slide, please. Next 2 slides. Finally, a thought of the ad hoc, which is not directly related to park dedication, but is related to park, tangentially related with respect to park naming, which we've been involved with. Considering that Terman Middle School was renamed by the school district to Ellen Fletcher Middle School, it seems like reasonable consideration that we might want to change the name of Terman Park as well. In talking this through with staff, the appropriate pathway would seemingly be for City Council to initiate a request for staff and the commission to pursue this further. But the role of the commission, the ad hoc and the commission would really be to raise awareness about this and push this to City Council for consideration. And that completes the presentation. Now open to questions and comments. Unless there's anything else you'd like to add, Kristen?
No, thank you.
And thank you for your support of the ad hoc moving forward with park dedication.
Thank you, Jeff. Before opening this up to for a clarifying question, so is there any public comments?
No seeing any hands raised in person, and if there's any speakers on Zoom, please raise your hand. Vice Chair, I'm seeing no hands raised online or in person.
Okay, any commissioner with any clarifying questions to ask? Commissioner Kleinhaus.
Thank you for the report and the work on this. On San Antonio Avenue, is there parking there for the public, or is this really going to be just for the neighborhoods and not really attract anyone outside of the immediate vicinity?
It would primarily be attractive to people living in the vicinity. I do not believe there is parking on San Antonio Avenue there. I'm not quite sure about the parking in the neighborhood, but this would be kind of similar to some of the mini parks we have, more on the other side of in North Palo Alto along the San Francisco Creek and some of the mini parks in College Terrace area. Is that something that staff would consider an obstacle? It's a small area that's not going to garner a big crowd.
I haven't been to this location, so I would want to see it, I think, in person. You know, usually there is parking next to parks, even if it's just street parking for a neighborhood park, but I imagine there must be street parking there. I would just have to look. I don't know.
It's a good question. Thank you.
What kind of amenities I mean, I'm supportive, but I just want to know what kind of amenities would be added here for the community and about like, let's say, removal of trash. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen when some piece of land becomes a park. So again, I'm generally supportive of this. I just want to know.
So if there were if there were a small dog park put in there, then we'd be looking into getting some water there, and there would be some trash. I think that we envision that opportunity for a couple picnic tables perhaps, and some trash receptacles, and that would be about it. I'm not looking to add a lot of amenities here, just something to help make the area a little more friendly and usable. And also improve maintenance of the area.
It would also go through all the public process, right? So right now we're talking about just park dedication, but if it does get dedicated as a park, then it will go through the process of community meetings, and so on. So.
Thank you.
Question?
Okay, Commissioner Oche?
Yes, please. Thank you, Vice Chair. Just a quick question to find out what the size of this, yes.
The acres.
Smallish.
So, Sarah Wallace Park.
Or, yeah. Commissioner Crooks?
Is it the Sarah Wallace Park? Is that the one on by California Avenue? That's just a little piece of park for sitting down and hanging out? Is it about that size, do you think?
A little bigger, probably.
Okay.
You can go back to the street view, Javad, get a little idea of it.
So, Commissioner, could I ask you, are these the only pieces of potential that the ad hoc looked at, or is there a big, long list of undedicated?
Sure, good question. No, there is a longer list.
Uh-huh.
These other items on the list include like potentially Gamble Gardens,
Mhm.
the ice skating rink. There's some areas at the end of San Antonio Road. One is an area near the wetlands that would be a reasonable candidate to pursue as well. There's a list of about a dozen items that the ad hoc has prioritized, and we could share that list.
That would be great. And is there any kind of a list, or does anybody in the city look around for, now that COVID is changing patterns, for potential land that could be looked at and then maybe not allocated, but figured out how to get some of that land, as we're looking at lots of new people coming into Palo Alto with housing in the years to come? Is there any ever thought that you would have I don't know what you'd call it, but like a land trust that you would hold that land, different places?
I'll have to defer to staff on that.
So thank you for that question. Sorry, getting caught in the wires. One area that I know we've started conversations about is along San Antonio, just because of future housing projects that are likely to go in along San Antonio and the need for parkland to go along with that. So I've been communicating with our planning director just to bring the issue to the forefront, to say this, we need to consider this, and he definitely agrees. So I think that's an area where the focus would really be as we continue development in the future.
Thank you.
And thanks for pointing that out. That is a potential additional appeal of the San Antonio Circle site. It's on a key corridor where we need more parks, where we'll have a lot of growth in community.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Yeah, let me, yeah, excellent presentations. It's actually nice to hear that there are other potential parks out there. And the fact that you've selected 4 and there's a lot more on the list. I do have a question. I guess this would be for staff. That is, well, is there, let's say the park is designated. Is there a checklist, I guess, used by the city to determine what amenities would go in that park? I know that for your San Antonio Avenue, you're looking at it potentially being a dog park and, you know, having a sitting area and so forth. I guess you would have to look at what the square footage is and how do you, okay, we got to go to make this a park. What's the checklist? Do you poll the community to find out what they would like to see in the park? That type of thing.
Sure. So that's a great question. I think there's some different factors involved. One is the size. So just Sarah and I did a little measurement on Google Earth, and it looks like that one piece is about 3/4 of an acre. That's a very rough estimate, but so it'd be the size, it would be distance to other parks that have amenities as well. And then it would be outreach to the community to see what what features they would like. So those would be some of the high level steps that we would take, and of course work with our Public Works park planner to help us with that.
Okay. And then you mentioned, Commissioner Greenfield, you mentioned that I guess it's Sherman Park, and that there's a process, I guess, for renaming parks, and that would be something that would go to the city council. What's that process like?
Yes, the city has a renaming process, and we're going through that process regarding the Tower Well Park right now. Kristen could elaborate on that.
Yeah.
And
No, go ahead.
I think what we discussed at the ad hoc level was it would come up at a discussion like tonight, and then potentially if the commission would like to take action, they can agendize it for an upcoming meeting. So there's basically 2 meetings where it gets discussed, then it can go to city council for their, and I have the policy right here and it outlines it. I'm happy to share more or forward it to you after the
That'd be nice.
meeting
That'd be
as
nice
well.
to see. Yeah. Because I think when you start talking about naming parks, that raises kind of a certain emotion level, depending on the attachment to the current name, and then what are some of the potential names. I think the public sort of knows what that entails. It might sort of make it a little bit palatable to adjust to. Okay, that's any other Commissioner Greenfield?
Given Sarah's last comment, I guess it'd be helpful to hear from the commissioners if they think this is something they would, the renaming is something they'd be interested in potentially pursuing to agendize it further to pass the suggestion on to city council. If that's the best process moving forward.
With any other Commissioner Kleinhaus?
I think if there is an interest in the ad hoc to look into renaming, I'm fine with that. I would love to see a Restradero, Pearson Restradero renamed to only Pearson. A Restradero basically comes from Spanish word for pulling something, and it was mostly used for logs and dead bulls. And, we kind of inherited that because of Restradero Creek. But if we're going to look at naming parks, then potentially we'd look at the Pearson Restradero, and maybe even Bixby, which is named after one of the city engineers. And maybe it should be, something more to do with the Bayland. So And I'll leave that to whoever wants to work on that, but just saying, I'm not
That-
opposed to
that-
changing names, but I would
Yeah,
go a
that
little
looks
broader
that's like it's
potentially.
opening up a can of worms there, but that,
And street names are outside our
Yeah.
purview.
yeah. So Commissioner Greenfield, are you saying it's, you'd like to have a motion for the name or just to see what kind of support
Well, This is not an action, so we shouldn't have a motion, but just to
discussion?
verbal feedback.
No, I'm for, I mean, the fact that that the school has already changed names. Either we go with a name that's similar to the area or yeah, it's definitely sounds like a candidate for, and it really depends on why the name Terman was changed, I guess.
I think the process is to initiate it, whether a name change consideration should be initiated without going into, without presupposing what the name would be.
Okay, any other commissioners on,
Thanks, Vice Chair.
Commissioner Archer?
Thank you. I'm not sure the backstory for changing the name. I would love to do that before I give any, I prefer to give a more informed response. I don't know why it was called Ellen Fletcher. I don't know the story behind it. And I was just telling you last week, you shared, both of you actually shared very informative email with me that really helped, give me more insight into the story behind Coverly. So getting to know more insight about something gives me more details to make informed decisions. So I think my homework will be to find out more about why it was changed and then be able to make more informed decision. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. With that, we're going to move to the next item, which is, sorry. We never take break. No. We take a 5-minute break. Okay, sounds good.
And then, Chair, are we going to be doing the bike one next?
I think that's the next one, right?
Okay, all right.
I
I will
believe-
let Councilmember Vinker know.
Wait, the next on the agenda.
Yeah, well, we also have the ad hoc and
Oh, we do
liaison
the ad hoc
updates.
after.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, so what, yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break and then come back in 5 minutes. Good. So this is the ad hoc, the bicycle e-bike access policy that Commissioner Kleinhaus and I have been working on for the last few months. So this is the presentation to the Parks and Rec. So we're good. So this slide is actually kind of one of the things that brought to mind is my mother-in-law, rest her soul. Actually, I remember it didn't think about it at the time, but one of the things that she had mentioned to me had been that she enjoyed walking on some of the trails. And she one day said, "You know, I'm not going to do that anymore." And I said, "Why is that?" She said, "Well, because I'm so afraid of the bicyclists and the runners potentially knocking me over." And as an older person, as myself included, that's not something you want to have happen. So as you can see, these folks are walking on a paved trail, which paved trail is one that we've allowed bicycles and e-bikes to use as well. So just keep that in mind as we go through this presentation, that there's a large range of different citizens who are actually taking advantage of our open space, which is something that we as a park and as a city encourage. Next slide, please.
Vice Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. First of all, I apologize for being late. There's a Finance Committee meeting tonight and it's ongoing. They're on a 10-minute break. So I have 10 minutes here. So I will look forward to reviewing your presentation on video after the meeting. Would it be all right if I made a comment now? I'm sorry to interrupt your presentation, but I would like to give a little thank you and context, and then I'll get out of here.
Sure.
Okay, I'm sorry for the disruption. But yeah, I got Chair Burt to take a break over there. I will say that after 6 hours of council last night and 4 hours of finance utility rate setting, if I start talking about the wrong thing, just Joy will correct me. No, first of all, I just wanted to just do a little context setting here because about the referral from council. So just in my role as the liaison with council. And the first thing is that it was back on February 27th of last year that PRC's recommendation about e-bike use came to council. And I want to commend this group and staff on the report that came to us because it was quite extraordinary, I thought. Obviously, an awful lot of work had gone into it by PRC and Payback. Excuse me. And it was interesting because you all were looking at all the parks and all the open spaces and trying to figure out where e-bikes should go and all of that. And I thought the headline the next day should have been that this unanimous recommendation of PRC that was adopted by council that e-bikes are allowed in all the parks, all the trails. And yes, there's a few places they aren't. But instead, as you'll recall, the headline the next day was e-bikes banned in the Baylands, right? So there was an awful lot of attention to this, but I commend you because I know through that process, many of the initial written comments you received were about asking you not to restrict e-bike use for commuting to schools or other places. And you worked through all of that and came to us with a really thoughtful report about why they could be used in so many places. And so the only item that was left for council discussion was really on unpaved trails in open space. All right, so that's kind of what happened. And the recommendation from PRC was that all e-bikes, classes 1, 2, and 3 were allowed on paved roads and trails in open spaces, but prohibited elsewhere, including on unpaved roads and trails. So there was a lot of discussion at council about the idea that if maintenance trucks and regular bikes are on the roads, class 1 and perhaps other e-bikes could be on some of those gravel roads. Didn't seem like such a huge incremental change. And so there was discussion about whether or not we should do that at the time. Talking about roads that are at least 15 feet wide and routinely used by motorized service vehicles in the parks, in particular the Baylands. But then there was also an awful lot of conversation about things that you all had raised in your report, like safety concerns with walkers and dogs and e-bikes being on the same paths and other concerns. And so there was a lot of conversation about the different classes of e-bikes, the different top speeds, which ones had speedometers, the different types of trails, unpaved, paved, et cetera, what appropriate speed limits would be, enforcement challenges to if you did set them, and what park user education you would need to best implement whatever policy. So all of these were things that were raised here, but when we were looking at the more granular question, we had kind of two choices. We could have just made some decisions here from the dais as a council, but we didn't have the expertise or background that was evident in your report. So what happened was there was discussion about, should we divide roads? Should there be special lanes for e-bikes? What do we do? And it was ultimately decided that we should ask the people who are smarter than we about this, and that is you all. So that is when we added to we approved the policy you sent and then added to it to ask you to look at that question of what should we do, particularly in the Baylands, but then the idea was, well, gee, maybe there's some places where bikes are that they shouldn't be, or where horses in the Rastradero are that they shouldn't be. But if we were going to allow e-bikes on some of these trails, we wanted people who could give us a comprehensive plan about how to roll it out, how to educate people. Should there be speed limits? Where do you do signage? What should they be? How do they coexist? All of that granular stuff, which was too big a lift to do from the dais. So that's what we attempted to put in our resolution. And like I said, out of deference to the expertise and knowledge that is here on this dais. But I believe, and I want to say I'm sorry that I noted when I came here, and that this wonderful work that I'm going to go hear about may only be part of it. And I regret that deeply, but I had to raise it because I wanted to get your attention and expertise before it came back to council, and people wanted to know the answers to some of these other questions. And I think what happened is there was an internal recasting of our resolution that came to you that did, and I looking at the language of ours and the language of it, I can see how it happened to limit the request to PRC to just consider if there are trails that should not have bikes. That's clearly what was asked of you. And I think that got lost in translation between the resolution from council and the staff recasting of it that was transmitted to you. So I'm very sorry that that happened. But we deeply want your expertise. And so I will be eager to see this part of it. And I will hope that the additional questions and things that I raised could also be brought our way. But I wanted to explain that to you to give a little context as to why that was of interest. And you may recall that when it came back to us a second time, that there were again 40 or some people here to tell us about e-bikes. And there's an effort to pull it, and that effort got 3 votes. But to pull it on a second read like that, it would take 4. So it did not happen. But the idea was they wanted to just go forward with e-bikes in the Baylands. So it's a close vote right now, very close. I feel deeply that we should have your input and expertise on this. And I just wanted to come to let you know why I've been raising it. It's out of respect and request for that expertise. So thank you for hearing me, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Thank you. And thank you for your comments. And hopefully in our presentation, we will hopefully have addressed a number of those items.
Good.
But I think you'll find there's probably still some gaps
Okay.
And so as such, this is not saying that this ad hoc is saying, because we make this presentation tonight, that's a done deal. It's, as we know, it's an evolving technology. It's also, there's a lot of things that are coming into the plate and looking at other, just the amount of time that we've spent on this in the last few months. Every time we have a meeting to discuss the items, there's more and more that pops out. So hopefully if we're unable to answer a lot of the questions, hopefully we can come back and at some later time to be able to address those.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I will watch this. And believe me, I wish I was done setting utility rates and could stay with you, but I need to go back and do that. I think the key, what it boils down to is we were asking what additional places and under what circumstances could e-bikes be allowed? And I think you were looking at, should we not have them somewhere? So that is the dichotomy. And if you looked at more than that, fabulous, and I will be eager to watch and listen. But I just wanted to share that. And obviously don't want to put you to extra work, and obviously appreciate what you've done. And I will make sure that I'm aware of what that is. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So the council direction, as Councilman Clinton said, the February 27th council did present to us 3 different motions. And as we were putting this presentation together, part of that was trying to address all of these. And as you'll see going forward, a lot of these items we have addressed, and there's still some open areas and open questions. A lot of this is for discussion. We know that we won't be making any type of decision tonight, but we do want to present this information and have the rest of the commission provide us input that can take this to the next level. So I'm not going to read through this, but you can see these are the 3 different motions that we considered as we were putting this presentation together, and hopefully we've been able to address most of these. Next slide, please. So part of this is looking at the bicycle e-bike access policy. We have not been able to sort of sync our calendars to be able to talk to the Payback and get their comments based on what our presentation is going to be tonight. But as I mentioned, this is an open, this is not something that's going to come to closure tonight. And so we are still looking at having a meeting, hopefully in the next week or so with Payback, so that we can get more details and more clarity on the direction that we want to go with the bicycle and e-bike access policy. Next slide. So motion 1 was to consider if we should reduce the trail speed limit in Baylands and Pearson Astrodero preserves. And so let's move on to the next slide, and I'll hand this over to Commissioner Kleinhaus. Oh, I lost track there. So one observation and consideration is that most bikers seem to follow the rules, 15 miles an hour, some exceed the speed limit. Talking with the rangers, that seemed to be the hard one to try. It's all based on, they don't have equipment to really measure that speed. It's looking at, with their experience, looking at whether or not that bicycle is going more than 15 miles an hour. Some bikers do slow down for the 5 miles per hour when passing others, which is supposed to be the norm, but that doesn't always occur. So there's increasing in talking with the rangers, they're saying that there's increasingly complaints about bikes, primarily in the Baylands. And there seems to be an increase in bicycle population, transportation that's happening also, which is, since COVID, more and more people have been taking advantage of our open spaces, and there's bikers and additional pedestrians and so forth. So part of that is respecting everyone's right to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. So staff encourages compliance, but has no ability to enforce speed limits. So you'll find at the end of the presentation that we have made some recommendations that don't necessarily mean that those can happen right away, and we understand that. But these are some of our recommendations. And then looking at some of the surrounding cities, like Marin's have their Slow and Say Hello program, which was recommended by staff, and they have a very informative website, and we'll put some information out there on that. So some of the recommendations: maintain the current speed limit to 15 miles an hour. It seems to be, again, whether we reduced it to 10 or took it up to higher than that, doesn't matter. It's something that we have to try and manage. Add rangers, equipment, and train rangers, and increase enforcement of some of the other recommendations. And then consider developing an education Slow and Say Hello program, similar to what Marin has, and coordinate this with Payback. Next slide, please. Okay.
Would you like to take questions and comments on each section, like on each of the motions, or all together at the end?
I think we should go ahead and just go through it, and then we can take questions at the end.
Okay, so the second motion was to consider whether and on what trails to restrict bicycles and horse access. This is the contentious motion, which is what Council Member Vinker was discussing. The intention that she mentioned was to expand access to e-bikes potentially, but what we read in that is a restriction, which is what we worked on. So there's obviously more work to do in the future. Next slide, please. So this is I'll go through the two preserves and each one with what we've learned. So Pearson Arrastradero Preserve, which purchased by the city in the 1970s, dedicated as parkland in 1981, with emphasis on the natural or open space amenities of the land and sensitivity to the fragile foothills ecology. In 2001, after a lot of public outreach, a trail management plan, which is sort of like a master plan, was created. This plan was mostly implemented as envisioned. The trail system has about 10 acres of trails. It promotes walking, biking, and horseback riding. There are no paved trails at Arrastradero, so according to our current ordinance, there's no e-bikes permitted. A brochure was created in 2019, and as I said before, generally the existing trail system is consistent with the management plan, but there are some places where it's not, and we'll discuss some of that. The management of the park focuses on seasonal or temporary trail closures in some trails due to wet conditions sometimes when it's unsafe. At some point recently, there had coyotes there that caused closure for dog access, things that are managed on an ongoing basis as the park conditions are changed. And there also staff uses physical barriers like boulders or logs and other ways to discourage social trails, which is basically unauthorized trails that people just go and create their own trails over time. And also to protect the habitat from encroachment. Next slide, please. So a few observations, and what we've done was really to visit the site a lot and look at what's going on there. We talked to some of the trail users on at different occasions. We talked to the rangers and came up with some observations. So one thing was very clear, that the multi-use trails provide safe and enjoyable access for a lot of people. Pedestrians use it, or hikers, equestrians, and bikers. They're using the preserves very heavily, and it seems like everybody's having a lot of fun. What we saw is that there is parallel bike trails, and those seem to happen more often next to wide gravel trails than other places, but not only. There's some parallel trails in other places as well. The unauthorized social trails exist in some places with some impacts that we'll discuss later, but also there is some trails that the 2001 plan was supposed to eliminate and block and restore the habitat, and some of them still exist. What we also saw at Pearson Arrestor is that there is some BMX-like activities that are impacting some areas, and we'll go into depth there in a minute. And so some of those areas show evidence of erosion, habitat degradation, and this is especially evident in the Bow Loop Trail, which is pretty steep and somewhat remote in the park. It's and so that's one thing that we observed, and we'll share a little bit later. And then we also saw that there is some places that could use a little more attention, like crossings of springs that are, there's water coming from the springs and seeps, and potentially could, it's not, we don't suggest that access be prevented in any way, but maybe needs a little bit of better passage. And then the other thing we noticed is that sometimes other departments do projects in our parks, and those sometimes have impacts as well. And sometimes they're not completely remediated. So it could be public works, it could be utilities, it could be somebody else. We don't necessarily know who created those impacts, but we see them. And what we also found out, as expected, is that due to staff resource limitations, there is no biological monitoring or any kind, not a lot of monitoring, there's some, and there's only limited ecological restoration, mostly by grassroots ecology, and very limited enforcement, which is what we saw in the Baylands as well. Next. The plan from 2001 was very, very detailed and actually an amazingly thorough plan. And it has in there something that we considered when we looked at what was happening on the trails, which is a map of environmentally sensitive areas. And they have areas that are high constraints, and then other maps that look at other types of constraints. This one specifically shows areas that have a creek and riparian vegetation in dark color and long, and then there's some lakes, yeah, there, thank you. And then there's some areas of serpentine soils, which are soils that are usually have very unique and rare vegetation of mostly like a lot of a lot of native, California native plants survive on these soils, basically because they're very poor in nutrients. Let's go to the next slide, thank you. So the Bow Loop Trail was of special interest. That's the one up that's steep there. It's a almost 0.7 trail, which is expected to be closed seasonally, but doesn't seem to be very, maybe when it's heavy rain. There's a lot of mountain bikers that use this, and it's very hilly and very challenging place. There are two locations there that are highlighted in red. One of them, the top one, is a stock pond, used to be, and now it's they call it the upper bowl, and then the one on the bottom is a quarry. And so let's go see what's happening in those locations. Also look at those trails, because we'll see later that in the 2001 plan, there was supposed to be one trail to replace these trails, and that didn't actually happen. So we have some parallel trails that, especially the middle one here, that goes through sensitive area, what is expected to be eliminated in the plan, but never was. Next. This is the Bow Loop area. The picture on the right is, I think it's the right, is from the brochure, and it shows all these parallel trails. The picture that says on the top, John Martin's Lane, that's the plan from the master plan. And you can see the two bowl areas there, the little, and there was supposed to be one trail. There's Meadowlark Trail on both, and then there was supposed to be one trail to connect those two bowl areas, or the quarry in the bowl area, and went with the contours. That was not built, and instead we still have all these other trails. Next. So this is what's happening there. This is from a YouTube video that somebody posted that they're having fun, and they have about 20 minutes of this. And this is just one of many. Next. And this is the Upper Stradera Bowl, the larger one. After the rains, the deer were enjoying the pond. That's the stock pond area. And what you can see in the picture on the right is the many, many little trails that come down from the BMX activities that didn't actually happen when it's all wet, but they do happen otherwise. Next. This on the right is again the same area that had the deer, the upper bowl area. This is when it's already a little dry, and you can see the trails that are made there, and it's very steep. And on the left is the bowl area where that guy was jumping earlier. Next. These are the other things that we mentioned. One of them is where there's wet areas that are due to springs or little streams. And there's, and the crossing as is could potentially degrade the water quality. Next. And this is some of the public works or some other, the picture on the right is some work that was done there and was left like this with the tracks. And on the left is the project that Commissioner Greenfield asked about earlier, I think, where they have all this stuff there sitting for months and months and months. And it's like a yard, yeah. Anyway, okay, next. So I'll go next to the Palo Alto Baylands Nature Preserve. There are two guiding documents beyond our general Parks and Recreation Master Plan. One is the Baylands Master Plan that was updated in 2008, and the next one is the Comprehensive Conservation Plan, which is a draft that an ad hoc will be looking at soon to try and get it to completion and adoption. Next. So the Baylands Nature Preserve is about almost 2,000 acres. There's a trail system of about 15 miles. Bikers and hikers are enjoying that space. The areas that have paved trails also allow e-bikes, no equestrians. And the Baylands provides a wide variety, this is from the city website, recreational and educational benefits, wildlife viewing, hiking, bike riding, water sports, and use of public lands for art installations. There's also a lot of habitats. There are wetlands like we see here. There are uplands, which are the most, like Bixby Park would be considered upland because it's not wet. And there are marshes that provide important habitat for imperiled species. There's a salt marsh harvest mouse, which is very, very cute and is imperiled, is almost extinct. Ridgway rail, which is the bird that you see in this picture, and then western boring owls that we used to have more of, and they used to nest at Bixby Park, but no longer do so. And there's a lot of government regulations and mitigation requirements and other constraints on what happens in the Baylands. Next. So when we look at the Baylands, we had to consider, again, the staff input from the rangers. We had to do our own investigation, going there, talking to people, seeing what people are doing. And there's also science that we could use. And so there was a workshop that the city sponsored about 2 years ago about balancing public access and habitat enhancement. They were looking at the horizontal levee, but one of the which we already, it's already moving forward. But one of the presentations was Professor Lynn Trulio, who gave a presentation on to what extent can wetland species and trail users coexist. And she's an expert on this, and she's done a lot of studies on this. So I thought we would share a couple of what we learned from these presentations. Next, please. So in this picture, you see some shorebirds. Some of those are migratory. They come here for the winter mostly, and then they leave and breed somewhere in the northern part of Alaska. And the stilt, which is this bird that you see here, those nest here actually. Some of them are migratory, but some of them nest here. Responses to trail use differ with different species. Not all species respond the same way. The location, some areas are more are different. Direction of approach, if you go straight towards them or it comes from the side, depends on the direction, the time of year, the type of activity that people do, and how people behave. Noise, for example, would be one of those things. So loud and fast movements are more impactful than slow moving people. What they also found is that vehicles where the birds don't actually see the people because they're inside a vehicle are less impactful than people who walk or bike. And one of the things that is important is how far the activities from the birds and the animals. If there is more space and there are some barriers between the birds and the people, they're less threatened. But really interesting observation is that people don't actually perceive their own activities as having an impact. People always think that what the other person is doing is very impactful, but they don't see that their own activity has an impact on wildlife. So remember, these are shorebirds because we'll talk about them again in a second. Go to the next one, please. So one of the things they also found is that nesting birds are extremely sensitive to trail use. And most people think about where does a bird nest? They think of trees and the nests are in the trees. But in the baylands, the birds actually nest mostly on the ground. A lot of birds would nest on the ground. A lot of them nest on the water. They'll build some kind of a floating little structure, and they can be in vegetation, but it doesn't have to be a tree. It can be a little teeny bush or grasses or some reeds along the water. It can be basically in a lot of different areas. And so impact to those birds can be pretty tremendous because they don't the harm to a nesting bird is not just that, okay, I flushed it. I came, the bird flew, it will come back in a minute. But while they're gone, their nests are exposed so that the eggs actually sit in the sun and bake sometimes, and the chicks die inside, or it can get eaten by something because nobody is guarding the nest. So the impact to nesting birds can be quite severe. One of the things they saw was that wintering shorebird species like those that we saw in the last slide are not extremely responsive to trail use. They looked mostly at pedestrians, but this would probably be true for the bicycles as well. Whereas wintering ducks are very, very sensitive. And so they measured the distance that average individuals of different species would have. So the blue distance, the blue bird is ruddy duck. Ruddy duck is the one with the blue beak above in the picture there. These birds come and spend the winter here. They don't nest here, and they don't spend the summers here, but they're here in winter in quite a large number. You will see them occasionally this time of year, but they don't have that lovely blue beak, which they use to attract other females during the nesting season. And they need about 100 feet from the trail to be comfortable. So if people get closer to the water, that duck loses a band of water near the trail. They just don't use that anymore, and they're moving further away. And it's true for other ducks as well. So that's a little bit of science. We'll go to the next slide. Thank you. So here are some of the observations in the Baylands. One is that there is a lot of social unauthorized trails along the levees that impact habitat because, like we showed before, it allows people to get closer to where the birds would like to be, and because it eliminates some of the vegetation. And these unauthorized trails are, some of them are in areas that the city has tried to restore in the past, like this area between Bixby Park and the tide gates of the bridge on Adobe Loop Trail. And all of Adobe Loop Trail has a lot of these, especially there's an area in the bowl area that has BMX activity. And from what we understood from staff, again, there is some conflicts and complaints about bike use. The next one, please. These are two slides that show a trail that one of those unauthorized social trails that is parallel to on the levee, parallel to where people should be walking. And on the left is a couple of people walking on the trail, but you can see the bowl area with bicycle tracks even in the water. So, and you know, that area is pretty denuded of vegetation. So next. So now we come to some general recommendations and we can discuss these, and next we'll also have some more specific potential thoughts or recommendations about for Estradero and the Baylands. But the first thing is the general kind of what we see. As we stated before, we think that we have to find a way to support staff in enforcing policies with additional equipment, training, and additional rangers so that they can actually enforce our policies in the parks. We need to be able to manage the unauthorized social trails. We may not be able to completely eliminate them. We probably will not, but we have to manage them a little better than Wild West out there. There's got to be some, and I'm sure there already is, but potentially a little more coordination with other city departments where work is done in the parks and potentially near the trails. We already mentioned to some education program that is possible, but more education for trail users, but also to engage naturalists, docents, volunteers, to teach people what they see. People don't know what to look for. These Mariposa lilies are beautiful flowers. They're only there for a couple of 3-4 weeks a year. And if people knew to go and look for them, they would have a blast. These are beautiful things. And we need adaptive management. And to manage a preserve, you need to know what's going on. You need to know the history, you need to know what's going on now, and you need to plan and monitor what's happening. And if you're successful in your management. So we think that there's got to be monitoring of user compliance and conflicts more than we have now. Project impacts and remediation, whether it's our city projects from parks or other departments. Habitat quality, there's climate change is changing some of what we see in the field. We would like to know more about how it's impacting our environment. Wildlife responses to trail use, you know, the studies that Lynn Trulio did are in the Baylands, in the South Bay. They're not far from here, but still it would be good to see. Maybe there's no problem and we shouldn't be too worried about it, but from what we know from the science, we need to be careful. Erosion and degradation of trail and other areas. And in restoration areas and mitigation areas, how successful are they? And so we would like to see more adaptive management and monitoring. So these are the general recommendations, and we can go through the other things and then we can discuss all of them. So the next slide, please. This is more for Pearson and Estradero, and we put some more pictures of the lovely flowers that you can see there if you go. We need to think about how to reduce some of the parallel and social branches of the Bow Loop Trail, where you saw the quarries and the BMX and the deer and all that. And potentially manage access at the upper bowl and restore the pond, but potentially not so much at the quarry, the smaller place where you saw that guy flying with his bike. It's something we can consider how much of that we should allow, if any. And then we need more stewardship at some of those locations where we have springs coming out with water. So that's for Pearson Arrestradero. And next, please, is the Baylands. So we did consider whether there should be horses allowed there. And after talking to the rangers, the recommendation is don't change that policy. It's enough already with all the different users, not to add another user group that could potentially conflict with existing ones. Potentially manage bike access to the Emily Renzel Marsh Loop during the nesting season. The picture that you see there is a pied bill grebe with a little baby on its back. This was taken there a couple of years ago, and birds nest there. And as we learned before, during the nesting season, they're very sensitive. So potentially we could consider closing that loop trail during the nesting season, not necessarily all year round. Dogs are already not allowed there, and this is one of the only places that Palo Alto prevents dog access because of the nesting birds here. It's not a large trail. It doesn't really lead into any other trail. It's pretty secluded, so it seemed like a place that can be managed relatively easily. Some of those social trails in parallel could potentially be restored, better managed, and maybe restore some of the vegetation, especially that area between Bixby Park and the Tidegate Bridge, where there had many efforts before, and maybe we can do, and some of it is still doing well, but a lot of it is kind of trampled. And then the Adobe Look Trail Bowl area, if possible, we need to think about that area as well as somewhere that could use some attention. Next. That goes back to Nellis. Thank you.
Yeah, so on motion 3 was consider adding bicycle racks at trailheads in the Baylands and Pearson Arrestradero, where bike parking is lacking. And that's already, staff, it's already been in progress. That's already purchased and is currently installing bike racks. So we spent a lot of time prior to that, spending time with the rangers and going out to the different parks and seeing where there were candidates for additional bike racks, replacement of bike racks. So you'll see that that some of those things have actually starting to take place. Next slide, please. So the ad hoc considered visited all, like I said, all the trailheads at the Bayland and Pearson Arrestradero Park. We conversed with bikers who are riding or parking their bikes, wanted to find out whether or not, what happens when you reach your location or where the locations where you would like to see a bike rack. And so as I said, we considered the existing bike racks, the existing usage, signage, and land ownership. So some of the observations were most existing bike racks seemed underutilized. So we saw a number of those, and so those were not candidates for additional bike racks. Bike parking at bike racks is strongly associated with restroom facilities. That's one of the takeaways from that. So, that seems to be where you'll see bikes just sort of laying on the ground as someone's taking the opportunity for the restroom there. Next slide, please. So the entire preserve open to bicycles. Existing bike racks are, like I said, generally underused. Recommendation is So we looked at, I'm not going to go through these, but look at the map here. We look at different places where we have added bike racks, or where we made working with the rangers where there's no change or no need to add additional bike racks. Some of these were already had, maybe bike racks were like could maybe handle 2 bikes, and an area where there could be additional bike racks added because of the amount of traffic in that particular area. Next slide, please. So existing facilities that we found, like Bayland Preserve, then we decided there was no need to add, and this is where the environmental volunteer eco center is located. And you see some of the types of bike racks that are currently there. Next slide, please. So 2 locations where the ad hoc recommended adding bike racks: the sales station lot, which recommended adding bike racks next to the kiosk trash enclosure. Then the duck pond, the Baylands entrance parking lot. And this is to the 2U bike racks are the ones you saw in the previous picture. And then at the Baylands Athletic Center, retain or replace existing racks and add racks. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. Then the other one's Adobe Creek Loop Trail, at the point that the trail transitions from asphalt to base rock. Recommended adding bike racks there. I don't know exactly where. I mean, I do know that they've started adding some bike racks, but I can't tell you exactly where yet. Next slide. And it's just sort of a map where most of the bike racks are located. So you can see that there are definitely some opportunities there. So I think we've, in going out and taking several trips with the Rangers, I think we've been able to accomplish a lot with adding additional bike racks so that people feel safe about locking their bikes up and having a place where they can store their bikes rather than having them laying on the ground and so forth. Next slide. So next steps is to review the e-bike and other mobility conveyance access to Baylands and Pearson Arrestadero. So consider things like staff input, payback input. And I mentioned that we're hoping to get on the payback's calendar in the next week or so. Community input, and then continue to look at and monitor new technologies that are hitting us from all different levels, and then looking at some of the new regulations, but also spending time getting. I mean, the Rangers have a really good perspective as to what's going on out there, and then having more and more conversations with them as to whether or not there's a need to make any modifications and changes. Next slide, please. So follow-up discussions, recommendation addressing impact monitoring, potentially eliminating social trails. As Commissioner Kleinhaus pointed out, there's a lot of social trails that is that only going to get worse as additional bikes are added, but just only time will tell. And then potentially reducing or eliminating BMX use on the bowl areas, and not saying to eliminate, but maybe to be able to manage that in a way that is not creating a bigger problem than what it seems to be. Next slide. And that concludes our presentations. And at this point, we'll open it up to the members of the public who.
Vice Chair, we do have one in-person speaker as well as one hand raised online.
Okay.
If there are any other speakers on Zoom, please raise your hand and you'll be added to the speaker list. One moment while I get the screen up and running. Our first speaker is Dashel, and Dashel, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Hello, Parks and Recreation Commissioners. My name is Dashel Leeds. I'm the Conservation Coordinator for the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. Balancing trails is a delicate act. There could be conflicts between pedestrians, bicycles, dog walkers, equestrians, e-bikes, and critically, the health of our ecosystems. When determining trail policy in nature preserves, a primary tenet should be to avoid harming the wildlife that rely on these preserves to survive. We support the recommendations of the ad hoc committee. I don't know if I've introduced myself. I'm Dasha Leeds. I'm the conservation coordinator for the Sierra Club. I have things. We ask that the development of trails policy utilize a science-based approach to balance public access with the protection of sensitive habitats. And on the topic of e-bikes, we are concerned that the proliferation of e-bikes within open space preserves could potentially force other users off the trails while impacting wildlife. As things stand today, e-bikes are allowed almost everywhere. They're only prohibited, as I understand, on unpaved trails within open space preserves. So people can commute on e-bikes today using current routes all the way from East Palo Alto through Palo Alto to Mountain View and back. And for folks such as seniors who struggle with mobility and folks with disabilities that still want to access places like the Baylands Nature Preserve, for example, they can reach out to the Baylands Supervising Ranger to receive accommodations under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And those who receive those accommodations will be permitted to ride the gravel trails within the Baylands as of today. So I just wanted to highlight that those resources are available. So as you move forward with your analysis, please do consider that these accommodations and conditions are already in place to accommodate commuters and people with disabilities and seniors. So please, as you move forward, analyze the situation carefully, follow the science, and balance public access without sacrificing the protection of our habitats. Thank you so much for your time.
Our next speaker is Sheila. Sheila, you've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, thanks very much. My name's Sheila Brady, and I actually really do like e-bikes. I think they're a boon to mankind, and I'm so happy to support them normally. But in this case, I really like taking pictures of birds and jackrabbits out in the Baylands. I've gone out there 5 or 6 times during the first months of this year, as I've been working on a couple of tiny educational shorts about the wildlife. And I've seen both regular bikes and e-bikes out there, especially along the San Francisco Quito Creek Trail by the Lucy Evans Nature Center. There's always egrets, snowy egrets there. The way I inevitably know when a bike is an electric bike, it's because they're pretty much always going too fast. When one zooms by me, I look and it's always an e-bike. I've even had to yank my little tripod out of the way, and I'm not blocking the entire path or anything, but and I do admit I get into trying to track the birds, and maybe I don't pay enough attention to what's going on around me always. But I don't think a nature preserve is the appropriate place to be on point all the time, that somebody any minute is going to yell at you on your right and you have to leap out of the way. Since I've been a kid, I've had trouble with instantly knowing left from right anyway. So now we aren't allowed to use drone shots over the Baylands, and that totally makes sense to me. We do not want to disturb these animals. This nature preserve is for them. And I just kind of don't see how letting e-bikes on the nature preserves helps the animals. Or maybe there could be some kind of a speed limit sort of thing, because I'm sure people don't understand that they're really going pretty fast. I was told that I saw that this discussion was going on a year ago as well. And I see that it's up again now for discussion. And I'm just kind of worried that, if somebody isn't there for every time this, access for e-bikes or speed limits for e-bikes comes up, if there isn't somebody to talk for the birds, that they won't be, eventually it'll just be e-bikes can go everywhere at any time. So I really appreciate you guys looking into this and taking care of the animals who are out in the Baylands. It's such a treasure. Thank you very much.
Vice Chair, I'm seeing no more hands raised online or in person.
Thank you. Thank you, speakers, for your comments. I'm going to go ahead and, for the commission, any clarifying questions? Okay, seeing no lights. Let's go ahead and open it up for general comments. I'll go ahead and start with,
Could I just ask
Sure,
one?
sure.
I think it's clarifying. There was one early slide that had bikes/horses. And so when it says bikes, is it bikes and e-bikes? Are we talking about them as the same thing, or are we calling out e-bikes if we're doing something with them? Early on in the slide, Shine.
Yeah, that was the actual motion, I think. The motion from council was whether and where to restrict bicycle and horse access. They did not identify what kind of bicycle.
Okay.
And they also used the word restrict, which we understood as less rather than more. And that may have been a misunderstanding, but they did not really say anything other than bicycle and horse access.
Thank you. That helps.
thank you. Commissioner Oche?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I appreciate Councilmember Vinca coming in to kickstart us to start the process of our discussion. I really appreciate the informative presentation. A big thank you to the ad hoc for all the work they've done. And what really stood out for me was the observations, especially the science behind it, because a lot of it, like you said in your slides, one of your slides, about people not really knowing what the impact of their actions or inactions are. It's interesting to know that the Pearson Aristidero was dedicated as a parkland before I was even born. And I really respect that. I also wanted to reiterate that one of our city council's priorities this year is protecting and adapting our climate change and natural environment. For us, I want to just, I like to not reinvent the wheel, but to learn from others. And I like what the Rangers recommended about the Stop and Say Hello program from Marine. I'm just wondering what other cities do in terms of enforcement, and what does enforcement look like? And I like to also dangle the carrot with the stick. So I'm wondering if more signage and like one of your recommendations talked about training, what would that look like for our city if we want to consider that? I would stop for now, but I really appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
If the rangers are on, we have Supervising Ranger Lisa Myers for Baylands, and then Mike Warner, the Supervising Ranger for the other preserves. They are listening and available via Zoom.
I would like to ask, especially about the Baylands, what are the conflicts that the rangers see, and what is the most severe outcomes they've seen in the past year or 2 years? Maybe the supervisor for the Baylands can give us a little more information about their experience in trying to manage and manage the speed limit, manage behavior, and what types of problems they see in terms of the safety and the use by people. Thank you.
Lisa Myers here. The conflicts that we have seen, a lot of them have been due to speed and inattentiveness by bicyclists. We have had a number of older individuals who have been hit by bicyclists. We also have had a couple of incidents in the last couple of years of folks who are out walking their dogs and have their dogs on extendable leashes. The bicyclists are not able to see the dog leash, and they have ended up clipping the dog leash with the bike. And unfortunately, we've had a couple of dogs that have been dragged by bicycles. think one of them was an e-bike. I think the other one might have been a dirt bike. And unfortunately, both dogs perished. So we have had a huge increase in bicycles and pedestrians over the last few years since the pandemic. And given that we only have 2 park rangers on at any given time down at the Baylands, and that's for 6 to 7 days a week. And the Baylands is open from 8 a.m. until in the summertime, 9 p.m. And we only have 2 of us on. It's very difficult for us to be able to enforce across 16 miles of trails through almost 2,000 acres of preserve.
Thank you, Ranger Myers. I do want to come up with, I know we had talked that made a recommendation for speed enforcement, possibly some of the others. I think it was asked about whether or not, what are some of the other cities doing, and some of the other cities do have things like LiDAR and other radar to track speed and issue citations, and that's not something we have on our end. And I know we have made a recommendation that is something that could be added. Could you say, I think you had mentioned that that's something that takes a lot of training and would not be something that would just solve a problem overnight. Maybe you can talk about that.
Sure. I would need to look into what the length of time is for the training for us to be able to use it, to be able to track speed for bicycles. But given that we only have 2 rangers on at any given time, and we are full service rangers, so when those trail sides get mowed, or a tree falls down, or somebody breaks a leg, or there's a grass fire, any of these things that go on, it's one of the park rangers that's dealing with it. Or an airplane crashes, we're generally the first ones on scene. So we have a lot of duties, and without adding additional staff, there's no way that we can even, really be effective. Other agencies such as Mid-Penn, they do run radar for bicycles on some of their hillier areas, so that they get folks that are going at an excessive speed downhill. So our turnaround time on being able to get trained, it would probably be through one of the local law enforcement academies. And it would probably be subject to whenever their schedule is for us to be able to catch a class.
Thank you. And it sounds like resources followed by additional equipment if we're talking about. And I imagine you've seen a growth in pedestrian traffic as well as bicycle traffic and other traffic increase over time without really just adding additional resources. So some of the recommendations that we're making, possibly, I guess could you say, is that going to add to your ability to be able to manage those things?
It would definitely would. In the 25 years that I've worked for the city, we have had a huge increase in folks using open space. In that time, we have lost some of our hourly staff positions, and we've only added 1 full-time ranger to that mix. The Baylands hosts anywhere from 650,000 to 750,000, 600,000 to 750,000 people per year. That is just the Baylands. That's not all of open space. Mike Warner would be able to speak to what the visitation level is for Foothills and Arastradero.
Thank you. Commissioner Klein, let's go ahead.
I don't know if Commissioner Kribs wants.
Just a quick question about effective enforcement.
About what?
Was effective enforcement. So we're not able to do effective enforcement because we don't have enough resources or enough rangers. So does anybody have an idea about what effective enforcement would, how do you measure that? I mean, how many people should we really have for staff for the open space that we have in Palo Alto? Maybe that's a better way to say that.
Lisa or Mike, can you provide your thoughts on that?
We currently have 6 full-time rangers and 2 supervising rangers. If we were to have a better staffing model, we would need to have 12 park rangers, 2 senior rangers, 2 supervising rangers, and 1 chief ranger, in addition to having more seasonal staff as well. That would give us enough so that, because at any given time on a weekend up at Foothills, quite often there's sometimes only one person opening up for all of Foothills and Arastradero, and that person's working in the entrance station rather than being out on the trails. So maybe we will have 2 in the morning up at Foothills, and that means we have one person who's quite often working in the entrance station. The other person might be picking up trash up at Foothills, cleaning up from the day before. So we are very, very short staffed. In the middle of the day, we have more staffing up at Foothills and Arastradero. But at the Baylands, the 2 people we have, that's going to be it for the whole week, for the whole day, every day except for Wednesdays.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for comments. Commissioner Greenfield.
Thank you. I'd really like to commend the ad hoc, along with the staff support, have done an excellent job of making a best effort to address the city council directives in a very comprehensive review and a lot of detail. I think I'm generally supportive of the suggestions you're making, recognizing that a lot of the suggestions are not straightforward to implement and address. But I think there's 3 parts of the city council directive, the motion. I think the first and third parts are relatively straightforward. Regarding the speed limit, there's no recommendation to change what we have, but to be able to improve education, particularly about the passing speed, 5-mile passing speed on trails, and also to come up with some ways to figure out how to improve and increase enforcement. And it's a challenging issue, which we're just touching on. I'm wondering if it seems like if there were just some occasional enforcement of speed and activity, someone going out on a weekend once or twice a month on a Saturday or Sunday, so just so that there's people get the idea that there is some enforcement going on. Have a contract employee perhaps who's trained for the use of LiDAR specifically, and they come out and that's their focus for a certain number of times during the month. I think that could be a first step that could have some effective consequences and would be manageable and achievable. Great to hear about the starting with the easy steps. Great to hear about the bike rack overview. I'm particularly supportive of the need to add some bike racks on the Adobe Creek Loop Trail at the transition between the Mountain View and Palo Alto border, where the pavement ends and the unpaved trail starts. I think that's really important to sort out, and it might be that the most appropriate place is on Mountain View land, so it's something that takes some coordination with the city of Mountain View. I think the considerations for regarding the second item in terms of access, I think the considerations for potentially reducing side trails are important to consider. Considerations for potentially limiting BMX access and the access to the bowls, reducing the access, increasing monitoring. I think these are important areas that require further discussion and community outreach. I don't think we would want to make a recommendation to change the access and without hearing from the members of the public, both the environmental community and the recreational community. The opinions, these are significant changes, but I think they're worthy of further discussion. So that seems very appropriate for next steps. I do want to make a comment about the process, some of the process here. Very respectfully, I feel like the introductory comments made by Councilmember Vinker were really unprecedented from my experience on the commission. I fully understand that and appreciate the intent was positive to clarify her opinion of what the city council directive was to us. It's something that she's shared with the commission on numerous occasions. But I feel like it's the interpretation and the opinion of one council member. I believe it's shared by other council members, but I also believe that other council members have a different opinion. The wording of the directive was frankly ambiguous. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But I think the result is that it's very unfortunate that this ad hoc had to start off their presentation compelled to present with apologies. And I also think it's unfortunate that the ad hoc hasn't been able to present to the Parks Commission sooner than now. That it was sidetracked because of this question. It was the director from City Council came over a year ago. This ad hoc's been in place for a year. It's important for the ad hocs to work, not be working in a vacuum and not to be working outside the commission, but to come back to the commission on a regular basis to share things and review things. And I think so I think an impact of this is that we haven't been able to hear from the ad hoc directly sooner. I think I'm not quite sure why this wasn't an action as well in order to respond to City Council. I think the response on I think the ad hoc's done a great job of really addressing the directive of City Council as it was interpreted by the commission, as it was interpreted by staff and their direction to the commission, as I interpreted by listening into the City Council when the directive came through. So I think it's important that the commission be able to function a little bit more autonomously in terms of pursuing the direction and recommendation we're looking to make. Certainly we need to be, we serve at the pleasure of the City Council. I fully appreciate that, and it's important to follow their direction, and it's important to work with staff and appreciate their guidance but I think this is an unfortunate situation how this has proceeded.
Thank you. Any other comments, Commissioner Gribbs?
Yes, I wanted to appreciate the work that the ad hoc has done for such a long time. It was really good, done well. And I think there's some very good recommendations in it. So I really appreciate how much work you've done, how many visits you took to so many places and all of the trails and all of that. I can only imagine. So I think we should all really thank you for that. I did have a question about the naturalist. And I know we don't have any money for a naturalist, but is there ever any point in using a naturalist on a kind of a third-party vendor to come in occasionally, or does that interfere with the science of continuity and all of that?
Grassroots Ecology does some weekend events, and there are other partners like environmental volunteers that work with schools and so on. But I think that it's mostly limited to either a school program or the availability of volunteers. And it's not as extensive as I would like, as we thought. The opportunity there is so much to show. We have such a beautiful ecosystem, and we go all the way from hills to the bay. And we do have education programs and so on, but a naturalist would be doing more than just education. A naturalist will be going and seeing, oh, the Mariposa lilies are flowering right now. This is not the time to mow them. Wait until they're done and the seeds are spread. So you could do if you have a naturalist as a consulting or something, it's not only the education they look at, but doing things like those highlights that we saw earlier. They can put together a newsletter that shows what to see this week in our parks. You know, we have all this stuff about the super bloom, and people in California would travel 100 miles to see things that we have here and they don't know about. So, yeah.
So, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so
Thank
understand
The
that.
staff
Pete,
wants to
what-
respond to.
A while back, we talked about Foothill Park and talked about grassroots ecology and counting animals. And do you remember that conversation? I think, Jeffrey, you were part of that as well. And I just wondered if we had ever pursued that.
I think the Rangers could probably answer that. I know that's part of their regular activity.
And Supervising Ranger Lisa Myers has her hand raised, so I think she'd like to contribute to responding to your first question. So Lisa, go ahead.
To give you a little bit of historical perspective, at one point in time, the Baylands had 4 naturalists that worked there. Over the years, the positions have all been moved elsewhere within the Community Services Department. And so now we have 2 junior museum instructors who work on an hourly basis, less than 1,000 hours per year. They do provide school group programs for kids at both Foothills and at the Baylands. However, they're very limited in their hours and what they're able to do. So it's not the same as when we had the naturalists working at the Baylands and up at Foothills on a regular basis.
So would it be, maybe this is taking too long, but would it be easy or sort of easy to look at Mid-Peninsula open space and some of the other cities who have extensive open space? I think Mountain View probably, no, not as.
Mountain View has a biologist, but they don't have extensive open space. They only have one park.
Okay, well, so to do some comparisons about what other cities or whether agencies have done, is that a really hard thing to do? Is it too much research or?
What they've done with respect to
Well, in
bikes
terms
and
of the
e-bikes?
amount of staff that they have in comparison to the amount of open space that they had. So those figures were really eye-opening when we learned about the 6 full-time and the 2 supervisors
Yeah.
and 2 more. I mean, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's a big dollar amount. So I just was wondering
Yeah.
how we compare with other.
Yeah. We might be pulling away a little bit from what the Ebike
We are,
policy.
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. But maybe that's something that the staff can consider as, maybe that's something we can address at a further, future presentation. Okay. Any other comments as it relates to the Ebike policy? I do, okay, oh, go ahead. Yep, okay. I do want to, on my behalf and being part of this ad hoc, and I'm sure Commissioner Kleinhaus feels the same way. It's been really great working with the staff, especially the Rangers, who really provided a lot of input, spent a lot of time with us to, answer questions, driving us around to the various parks and so forth. So I really, it was a great working with them. So the contribution for this effort and what we've been able to put together is, we couldn't have got that as far as we have without their input. So just wanted to lay that out there as well.
Thanks for acknowledging that. And I will say the same. You both spent a significant amount of time working on this. So wanted to express appreciation for that as well.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Greenfield, I think you had a comment.
Sure. And I think I already mentioned something to the same effect, but I really appreciate all the effort by the ad hoc and staff on this. I think I'm interested in understanding where we go from here. I think it'd be helpful to spend a little time clarifying that steps, both thoughts from the ad hoc and guidance from staff on this. We do have a directive from City Council that we have not, that I believe an action is the most appropriate way to respond to it. And so I would like to understand that the timeframe that we'd be aiming for on this, also with respect to the new ad hoc that's been created for this work. I think we've touched on some of the follow-up work for that. There's also the issue of discussing and reviewing e-bike access in the open space areas. Do we feel like all of this needs to be reviewed and included and have a summary statement before we return to City Council with an action recommendation, particularly bearing in mind how long it's the timeframe that's been since the referral came to us? There could be some value in responding to them sooner than later and giving them an opportunity to comment back to the commission in terms of additional follow-up work that they're looking for to better clarify the ambiguities. I don't know if that's something that staff and the ad hoc feels like would be helpful, or there's a better direction, there's a clear enough direction on how to proceed. I know in the retreat we talked about the ad hoc not being a more of a short-term ad hoc, 3 months. I'm guessing that might be a little optimistic.
In listening to Councilmember Vinker today, it seems like they wanted a level of detail that I don't know that an ad hoc can do. I think it's a consultant work. Every trail, it's basically new plans. And so I'm not, I think the ad hoc can work on this, but I'm not sure we can achieve the level of detail that the council member is looking for. I think we need to work with staff and the rangers especially on what is implementable and how that comes into budgets or planning for the future in terms of in terms of trail use in general, and some of the other issues of monitoring, adaptive management, and enforcement. So I think we need to have like a regular meeting with staff, a weekly, at least a meeting with staff. And I think part of why it fell kind of between the chairs is that staff changed and we didn't really have the staff that started working with us at exactly the time that we realized that maybe we're not exactly fulfilling the intent behind the motions. The staff left. And so now there is fine good that we have new staff.
Playing catch up.
And so we need to do more work there on implementation. I don't know when the best time to go to council, if it's now or we should have something more defined, because we really kind of got thrown off the horse, if you like, in terms of the work that we were doing. And if you have input on whether it's good to go to stuff now,
Did you want?
No, go ahead.
I agree with Commissioner Kleinhaus. I think maybe we regroup after this with the Rangers, Sarah and I, and the two of you, and sort of lay out what our next steps are. I am looking at the motion from council, and it does not say to come back to council. So that might be a question as to, it says refer to staff for consideration. So usually it will say and return to council with XYZ. So we need to discuss whether that's something we need to do. Is it just a study session? Are we asking them to approve something else? We would really need to discuss what it is we'd be bringing to council if we did go back to them.
So in one of the upcoming ad hoc meetings, we can discuss that?
I
and
think
you'll-
so, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, I think that's an appropriate action. Yeah. Okay. Okay,
Thank you for
thank you.
everything,
No, thank you.
everybody.
Yeah.
I just want to make a quick comment. Well, I was making comments at things that was unfortunate you hadn't come back to the commission sooner. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. And it's a,
Understood.
it's a process.
Understood.
Understood. Okay, let's move on to reports from ad hoc committees or liaison groups. Anyone? Commissioner Oche, Commissioner Chris.
So with the new, thank you, Vice Chair. With the new ad hoc formed, Commissioner Way and I would follow up. I know there was kind of like an intergenerational event for teens last Friday at the Michelle Park. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to stay, but it seemed like a very great opportunity for youths and also for seniors to mingle and talk and learn and collaborate with each other. So I'm looking forward to see more of that happen in our city. And a big thank you to is it Bingley or Bridley? I've forgotten her name, but she facilitated that event, and it was so much fun to see, progress in line with what we really want to see in our city. So, thank you to the city staff for that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Bishop Greenfield.
Yes, thank you. So an update as the Safe Routes liaison. I met with staff, with Sarah and Mark Ribeiro, with a high school student who's working on a proposal for a Girl Scout Gold Award, which was kind of the equivalent of the Boy Scout, the Eagle Scout Award for Boy Scouts. And she's looking to create a traffic garden potentially at a park in Palo Alto. She's been working with transportation staff and with and other people been involved with Safe Routes. A traffic garden is basically a practice area to work on for children to work on learning their bike skills, and the scope of it can vary quite a bit. It's a common part of the bike rodeo that's part of the PAUSD school program. I think that's for third graders. We had a good meeting, a lot of great ideas, some challenges in terms of the timeline to put something concrete in place for the timeline of the Silver Award by September 25. Challenges in terms of budgeting and selection, but I think it was a good first meeting and a worthy project. Sarah, I don't know if you have any further comment on that. Thanks for attending the meeting. It was very helpful to get staff feedback. Yesterday at City Council, the Quarry Road item was presented to City Council, and just observe that, and City Council did approve that on a 5-1 vote, and so the recommendation is to move forward with the process, but there will be a second hearing to discuss it at City Council in mid-June, with an opportunity for comment from the public on basically why they think they shouldn't move forward with that. There's been a lot of activity with the working with staff on the synthetic field turf replacement. Looking at there was a vendor that was selected to go with that has two potential products to work with. One is a infill, so the grass blades are synthetic material, but the infill is the material that surrounds the blades is an organic material. Either it's sand and ground up corks, which is fairly common, or the more premium product was sand and olive pits. And initially, we weren't really paying much attention to the olive pits approach because that's the more premium product and staff didn't anticipate having budget to pursue that. Now there's potential budget and we're working, trying to get some feedback on not just from recreation department staff, but also from actual users, from soccer teams or coaches or referees and things like that that have the user experience on the field. And appreciative to staff for a lot of work going on in the background on this.
Yeah, I definitely concur with. Yeah, concur with that. Just the keeping us up to date on what's going on with that and getting the feedback. And there's a lot of work. So it's really good to see something like that actually taking place. So really appreciate what's happening with that. Commissioner Grips.
I believe that the aquatics program is hiring lifeguards now, so that's good for the summertime. And I'm hearing that people are excited about being lifeguards this year. So maybe the director has something more to say about that. But
just that you're correct. They're hiring for lifeguards, swim instructors, and the application is directly through Palo Alto Swim and Sport, not the city. I haven't heard how many applicants they're getting and what their need is, but they're always really good at doing the recruiting and getting top-notch people. So,
well, it's a great job for the summertime. So it's good. And then on our racket court policies, there soon will be the committee put together that we talked about some time ago to look at pickleball and tennis. So I think that's a good thing going forward as well. I think that's all. Oh, just to clarify, so we're still reporting out about the last year's ad hocs because the new ad hocs that we formed have to be part of the work plan and then have to be approved, right?
That's so. I think I think the old ad hocs should be wrapped up now. I think after after the presentations at this meeting, my interpretation is the ad hocs are wrapped up. The new ad hocs need to start work to create their work plan that would be presented and approved by the commission to present to city council at the upcoming meeting. So that should be the primary. My interpretation is that's the primary work for the ad hocs between now and the next meeting, and then
so that will be the May meeting.
That will be the May meeting, and then the practice has been to move forward with things that, assuming that the work plan is going to be approved. I think there's in general, there's not too much controversy about the work that the ad hocs are doing, and happy to defer to staff if they have a different opinion.
And then at some point, the staff assignments will be.
Yes, that's an excellent question. Javad had pointed that out, that normally we have the staff assignment. So we still need to do that, and when Steve gets on board, and we'll be able to divide up those responsibilities. But I agree with Commissioner Greenfield that I think it makes sense for the new ad hocs to work on their topic now, because that will help define what's in the work plan. So, and then if they're working on that topic, they've helped craft it. So that makes perfect sense.
It was just sort of to clarify the fact that we all turned in the accomplishments and certainly thought that that was kind of done. And then we have new ad hocs, but we really don't yet. So and I think because the retreat was so close to the meetings, that maybe that's.
So I think another way to think about it is what happens next year. there's a couple commissioners whose term expire on March 31st,
Two
Commissioner
of
Cribbs and
us.
myself.
Yes.
And so this year, there were no expiring terms on the commission, so there's no transition, so we had kind of some room to play with. But in the future, I think, and for the ad hocs that just been created, I think it's important to focus on completing work by March of next year, because that's when the commission members will change. And so that becomes a more natural transition.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think so the next step is commissioners, members, questions, comments, announcements, and future agendas. I think we just covered that, did we not? So that's not future agendas, but
Future agendas, I think is.
okay.
Yeah, I think the May meeting will be focused on the work plan. And then we'll work with Chair Brown and Vice Chair Freeman on future agendas after that.
Okay. Commissioner Kleinhaus?
Yeah, back to the new trail through the meadow. Is that something we can schedule as an agenda item to figure out how that happened and discuss what should happen in the future and maybe even for this particular trail?
We should be able to put that on the May agenda. I'll confirm with Ranger Warner that he's available and on that day.
Okay. Any other comments? I get a motion to adjourn? No motion needed? Just say it's over. All right. Thank you.